Deus, o salutaris nostra, Dominex Deus, Ilinex Deus, Ilinex Deus, Deus noster, Dominex est, Angeli,
Hey, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a fantastic day. It is Friday, November 1st. It's All Saints Day. So happy feast to all of you. You know, it's a joyous day, joyous occasion. Remember for tomorrow, it's important. Tomorrow, you need to get some souls out of purgatory. Get souls out of purgatory. So not gonna get into that. Maybe I will eventually. If I get bored of this, maybe I'll get into talking about purgatory. But it's very important, you suffer on this earth through penance in order to be not in the purgatorial fires, okay? St. Augustine says it's worse than any pains on this earth. You want to have a sort of tender heart of mercy towards those souls which are already in purgatory. And you need to make sure you offer up your prayers, all of your sufferings, and Holy Mass for those souls in purgatory. Okay, guys? Okay, that's what you need to do. Okay, I don't want any of this nonsense where, you're listening to whatever the dumb, normie level explanation of purgatory is, where, there's not any souls in purgatory and they're actually all gone, guys. Trust it, they're actually all gone. No, you need to hold to the magisterially defined traditional teaching on purgatory, where we believe there's souls in purgatory suffering due to the temporal debt that they have from many accumulated sins on earth. And, you need to hold fast to that. And in response, you keep yourself out of purgatory and you do all that you can in order to get the holy souls out of purgatory. Because, and you may ask me, well, why wouldn't I just, when I'm in purgatory, suffer for it all? Well, now, it's great, is now you can actually merit for those sufferings. But once you're dead, particular judgment happens, you are not going to actually be able to merit through that suffering, okay? So do it now. Don't wait until later. Life of penance, okay? You guys get it? No venial sins. I don't want any venial sins. Keep away from venial sins. Go to the sacrament of confession. Confess your sins, do your penance in a spirit of penitence. Get indulgences, okay? Indulgences, they're important. If you don't know about indulgences, get those too, okay? Everybody hear me? Okay, good. So that's my message for you guys. You guys need to, this is important, okay? This is very important. So, anyways, what are we doing tonight? What are we doing, guys? I wanted to go through a classic, an absolute classic. I remember listening to this when it came out. This was, probably like 4-ish years ago, where we had a fun little debate between Trent Horn and Dyer. Both of them, I guess I'm on good terms with them. So we're going to be fair, we're going to be honest, everything like that. But what I wanted to do, as I always do, is before we, get into the debate and stuff, I wanted to kind of myself explain stuff to you. Okay, so you get it before we, get it done before we get into the video, so I don't have to explain things a million times. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, great. So this debate is over, natural theology. Okay, what does natural theology mean? What the heck does natural theology mean? Basically, if we want to break it down, natural theology, it's a term sometimes used within Catholic theology. Usually we're going to refer to this as something like theodicy or metaphysics of infinite being or something like that. But it's basically from God's effects, we can know things about God. Okay? This is classic Romans chapter 1. From the creation, you know the creator. Okay? That's all that this is. We know his existence and then some attributes. So if we actually, I am going to I'll just go to Romans 1 because I know that some of you guys, unfortunately, are not going to know as much about sacred scripture as you should. Okay? So let's go actually to Romans 1 and let's actually read, what happens in Romans 1. It says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and wickedness of men who by their wickedness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God, so what can be known about God from creation, is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature, namely his eternal power and deity, has been clearly perceived in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, notice they know God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their senseless minds were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal men or birds or animals or reptiles. So what you have here is you have creation of the world, you have the effects of God, and we're able to reason from the effects to positing the cause. That's the movement that happens here. And this is technically speaking, and I'll bring us back to our thing. This is technically speaking what we call in philosophy. I'll call it scientific knowledge. It's technically scientific knowledge of God, and this is something which is natural. This is distinct from supernatural knowledge of God, because you can have in the supernatural sphere, you can kind of have two forms of this. Either the knowledge that comes by faith. So this is God reveals certain things in his word through our Lord, through his apostles. He's revealing things to us, and we assent to them by faith. Okay? It's the assent on the basis of witnessing, on the basis of a witness. That's what faith is. And then we also have the science of the things of faith, which is basically you have revelation and you're trying to understand and define those things which are revealed to us. And we're trying to understand them by analogies with created things. And then also we're trying to draw forth certain conclusions from revelation. So those are the various forms of knowledge. These two right here, knowledge that comes by faith and the science of the things of faith, it's not going to be important here. Trent and Jay are going to agree on these things. So we're also going to have what's called natural religion. Okay, so what the heck is natural religion? Well, basically, natural religion is something which resides in the will. So as we saw in Romans 1, there's the presentation of God by the things that he has made, and we can know him with our intellects, and the movement of the will towards God insofar as we know him through created things. So this could be adoration, thanksgiving, impetration, which is asking for certain benefits, things like this. That movement of the will towards God insofar as we know him from created things, this is what we refer to as natural religion. Okay? So this is all we mean. So I just kind of want to lay it out there very straight. Okay? People say it's only venial. I'll keep doing it, like you hate God. Yeah, that's a great tragedy when individuals deliberately have deliberate venial sins. It's very much a tragedy. Okay, so I'll keep up on the live chat, but I really want to get right into it. I really want to see what the arguments are going to be between the two. It's 2 hours long. It's probably only going to be about an hour. Going to be actual, things. But this was held by Swansona. Let me get through the introductory part. So I'll share my screen and then we will get right to it. I'll answer questions and stuff like that if I see that they're good, or, if I want to pause at a certain point, or if you want to object or anything like that. anything like that. But yeah, I'll keep up on everything. Don't you guys worry. I'll keep up on chat. And mods, if there's anybody who comes in and tries to be annoying, crush them, get rid of them, kick them out, get rid of them, kick them out.
As I was telling Trent.
Okay, wow, this is really quiet.
Beforehand, I've watched several of his debates, at least 3 of them, and I think he's a really skilled debater. And the other thing that I appreciate about Trent is that I think he's a sincere person. And a lot of times in this domain, people probably aren't that sincere, at least not as often as we would hope. But I think that Trent is a sincere guy, so I'm looking forward to a fruitful debate today.
Okay, so how old is this debate? That's a good question. 3 years ago, let me see. Because I remember reading this, okay? Oh, it doesn't have a date on it. Anyways, oh wait, November 1st. Whoa, this was exactly 3 years ago. Whoa, you guys see this? Exactly 3 years ago. That's crazy.
Likewise, Jay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, Jay, whenever you're ready, I'll get the timer going. 15 minutes.
One thing before you start, I would like to add too, is that I mentioned to you, Suan, before this, that a lot of what we're going to be talking about is going to be pretty dense. So I will be referencing a lot of papers and articles, scholarly essays that Suan has agreed to later tag below. So if I blow past something and you want to look at it later, we do. He does plan to put the references below.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me. Okay. All right. So, when it comes to this issue, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of clarity that needs to be made. So first of all, I want to say that I'm not defending a position that there's no such thing as natural law. I'm not defending a position that there's no such thing as moral law. I'm not defending a position that per se there's no such thing as natural theology simpliciter, because it really depends on what we mean by the term natural theology.
Okay, this is good. This is good. Jay's partially conceding. Let's see what he says.
One of our great theologians in the Orthodox Church, soon to be a saint, Father Demetrius Daniloi, wrote in his famous dogmatic work, Orthodox Dogmatics, that for the Orthodox Church, there is no natural theology. And this is because we follow the teaching of St. Maximus when it comes to the Christological character of the created order. So in other words, there's a fundamental Christological element to the created order that doesn't allow us to bypass that Christology or that Trinitarian theology to do something like natural theology. So from the outset, Daniloi notes that when we look at the natural order and when we do what we might call natural contemplation, the content of the natural order and natural contemplation is the same as the content of Scripture. And in Orthodox theology, in many places I will show, that is actually the doctrine of the logi. So although it might sound weird to those that aren't familiar with this doctrine, St. Maximus's doctrine, which is really a logically consistent position of following through many centuries and councils in terms of working out their Christology, Maximus is really the summation of this doctrine of the logi, and it really is the embodiment of Christ, we could say, in the created order, which really comes to fruition after the resurrection and in anticipation of the eschaton.
Okay, so right here, I'll say that for us Thomists, and this is agreed upon pretty much throughout all of the different schools, there's going to be 3 orders which we speak about. We're going to speak about the natural order, the order of grace, and the hypostatic order. So each one of these 3 orders, they're formally distinct. That is, they have distinct concepts that can be understood. Okay? So I can understand the natural order, I can understand the hypostatic order, and I can understand the order of grace and the hypostatic order. I can understand these distinct orders, and I can understand the certain perfections of this distinct order. So, like, for example, he brought up natural law. So when it comes to the natural order, I can understand things about justice. I can understand things about prudence. I can understand, things about all of these different virtues of the natural order. But there's kind of a caveat here, because obviously, we don't explicitly, he might say that we may disagree with him, but, at least this is the way in which we would interpret St. Maximus. We would say that with these 3 orders, there's a certain interconnection between them. What is this interconnection that occurs between these 3 orders? Because we would say, technically speaking, it's not outside of the absolute power of God for him to, let's say, not become incarnate, and you just have the natural order and the order of grace. Or we could say that technically, in accordance with the absolute power of God, he could just have the natural order, for example. These are within the scope of God's power. He is not obliged, he's not forced by anything to create these 3 orders. But we know that God has, in his condescension, willed these three orders to exist. And this interconnection is not anything of sort of intrinsic necessity when it comes to these orders. Rather, it's going to be a subordination of end. So the natural order is ordered to the supernatural order. God has willed that it be ordered to the supernatural order. So, for example, when we think of the natural virtues, we think about justice. Let's say chastity. Chastity is a great example. When we think about chastity, I mean, you can have the natural virtue of chastity present in a pagan philosopher, or the natural virtue of chastity present in, St. Augustine will talk about it's present in like the Vestal Virgins. They have the natural virtue of chastity. They have control over their sexual faculty, blah, 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 blah. But there's also what's called the modally supernatural virtue of chastity. So this is going to be God has willed to take this essentially natural thing and subordinate it to a higher end, and also to bring it about in a greater manner. So God has chosen to give through grace. He's chosen to give this modally supernatural chastity that is subordinated to the higher end. And since it's ruled by charity, it's something which is meritorious to eternal life. Necessarily, chastity isn't something which is meritorious to eternal life, only when it comes by grace and it's ordered to its proper end. Okay? So when it comes to the fact, since God has decided to make the order of the world this way, when it comes to natural chastity, if it is not subordinated to its supernatural end, it actually doesn't, technically speaking, reach its end. Okay? So we're keeping both. We're keeping the proper distinction between the orders, but also subordination and interconnectedness between the orders. Does that make sense? Okay. Hope that makes sense. That's going to clarify, I think, a lot of the difficulties, because oftentimes there's a misunderstanding about what the scholastic doctrine of the supernatural order is. And they kind of view this as like disconnected blocks stacked upon one another, rather than true and proper subordination that exists. So the virtue of chastity is understood in an incomplete way. Well, the virtue itself, the virtue itself is understood because it's something which can be naturally, understood. You can naturally understand that you need to regulate your sexual faculties. Like pagans understand this all the time. This is something that non-Christians understand all the time. But God has willed that chastity be called above and outside of itself. He has willed that chastity be an instrument for bringing about eternal life through grace. So in this way, yes, you could say that it's understood in an incomplete way because God has willed that it go beyond itself, and they're not going beyond its natural form. Okay, does that make sense? Anti-Semitism isn't funny. Okay. Let's continue.
Other Orthodox theologians, for example, continue this tradition to point out that there's so many problems with the Hellenic idea of natural theology that really go under.
Okay, so what, again, this is going to be a difficulty that we're going to have, the Hellenic idea of natural theology. What is the Hellenic idea of natural theology? Because, and this is something extremely important. I actually asked Jay about this, and he kind of conceded at least that this was like a major force. But when it comes to what you're naming, like the Hellenic theory of X, when it comes to philosophy, Hellenic just means Greek. Okay. So when it comes to the Hellenic theory of natural theology, where is this mostly going to be contained? Well, it's going to be contained in some of the works of Plato, but most importantly, this is going to be contained in Aristotle's Physics and Metaphysics. In the end of both physics and metaphysics, Aristotle has a very defined theory of natural theology, of what can be known from creatures about God. Now, why is that important? Well, what's important about that is that when it comes to the works of Aristotle, and I've pointed this out, this is received and commented on by a group of individuals known as the Peripatetics. If you look up, you can look this up, ancient Greek commentators on Aristotle. You can just look up that up. There's going to be a set of the ancient commentators on Aristotle. Over 100 different translations. Now, why are these important? Because these are individuals from, 1st, 2nd century BC, all the way up until the sort of early medieval, late patristic era. these are going to be a lot of individuals who are commenting, kind of like what's actually exactly like what's done in Latin in the Latin world about the 13th century and following, who are including some Christians, by the way, who are commenting on Aristotle. Now, when it came to the church fathers, where do the church fathers learn their philosophy? The church fathers learn their philosophy from the Peripatetics. So when you read, for example, St. John of Damascus, and you read his philosophical chapters, his Dialectica, in his beginning of Fount of Knowledge, what you'll see is that St. John of Damascus is actually taking from peripatetic commentators on Aristotle, whose explicit goal is to bring together Aristotle and Plato into a synthesis. So when it comes to St. John of Damascus, he is explicitly teaching in his philosophical chapters, especially from a guy named Ammonius, but he's explicitly teaching a Hellenic philosophy. He's teaching a Hellenic philosophy as sort of the expression of that natural order. Now, of course, he's going to say, well, divine revelation comes in. Divine revelation is going to kind of clean out where maybe the Peripatetics and Aristotle and Plato went wrong in some areas. They're going to say, well, this knowledge needs to be subordinated to a higher end, but they're going to be substantially presenting Hellenic natural philosophy. And this is something present in all of the fathers. The Cappadocians are explicitly quoting these individuals and learning from them. You see St. Cyril is explicitly quoting and learning from them. Leontius of Byzantium, he's explicitly learning and quoting from them. All these guys are, in many ways, substantially in their philosophy Hellenic and learning from the Peripatetics who are commenting on Aristotle and Plato. So we have to be very careful about this. And I'm curious how he's going to distinguish this. If he distinguishes this kind of how I said is, oh, this is definitely absolutely incomplete and non-salvific because it's not subordinated to its proper order. Okay, that's perfectly fine. But we need to see exactly what he means by this. Okay?
Here goes what we might say is a metamorphosis. Father Florowski in his essay, Revelation, Faith, and Philosophy, St. Justin Popovich in his chapter in Orthodox Faith and Life in Christ, on the epistemology of Isaac the Syrian, notes that this is also in St. Isaac the Syrian an epistemology of the Logi. And so the fundamental issue here is that, as he notes and as Florowski points out, there's a transformation of the terms and the words that the Hellenic philosophers use. The great convert to Orthodoxy, Yaroslav Pelikan, wrote an excellent book that also touches on this topic that I recommend in more detail, where he talks about the metamorphosis of natural theology in the Cappadocians. And of course, the Cappadocians are going to play a huge role in what I'm going to try to get to today.
And this is also something that I want you guys to be aware of, is the quoting of secondary sources. Obviously, we know secondary sources are important for recommending different works, but we actually want to know directly from the individuals that we're talking about. Church fathers who, because in a debate like this, we can have church fathers who we commonly recognize as authorities. Okay? We can commonly recognize certain church fathers as authorities, but I want to know specifically, particularly in their works, where they are rejecting certain theses of natural theology that are accepted by Latins, by us, and especially by the way in which the magisterium has taught about this. That's what I'm going to want to see. That's what we're going to want to look for.
So in other words, what we call the theology of nature or theologizing or reasoning about the natural world is not itself the problem. It's rather the reference of these things. It's rather the grounding of these things in an epistemological sense. And so St. Justin Popovich goes into a great deal to explain that Orthodox gnoseology is unique. And it's unique precisely because it's a different metaphysic, a different anthropology, namely centered around the doctrine of the nous. In Roman Catholic theology, to my knowledge, I don't know of any place where there's an explicit acknowledgement of the doctrine of the nous or the heart of man, which is the primary organ or faculty for knowing God. The doctrine.
Yeah, so for us, this isn't going to be particularly a distinct organ, but the way in which we're going to think about this, and there's multiple ways. Maybe I can bring up my Google Doc and I can explain this about the way in which knowledge works for us. But there's going to be something called the agent intellect. And then there's obviously, so the agent intellect is going to be basically that which illuminates the forms for us, so we're able to understand the forms of things. And with this, I mean, when it comes to our natural knowledge of things, we're going to know certain effects And from these effects, we're going to reason up to their causes. So this is not going to be any sort of immediate knowledge that's going to touch God. So in this way, like, yeah, I'm very sympathetic with what Jay is saying here. I'm very sympathetic with it because we know that this knowledge is something which is merely a deduction from effects. We know that this knowledge is not something which is salvific. We know that in the supernatural order, it's something which is generally incomplete. We know all of these things, of course, but we're going to obviously have the assent of faith. And this is going to, along with this, come the light of faith. So God is going to extraordinarily illuminate us in order for us to have this supernatural knowledge of God. Okay, does that make sense? We're going to have this supernatural knowledge of God wherein we're raised above nature. But this doesn't destroy the natural knowledge of God we have. Rather, it's something which completes and elevates and subordinates the natural knowledge of God that we have to a higher end. So that's what we're going to believe. That's what we're going to affirm. Okay, so I don't even know why I brought that up because I didn't really need it.
The news will then play a central role in all Orthodox theologians that I'm aware of in terms of how we would exegete texts like Romans 1 or Psalm 19, which are typically used as texts to prove natural theology in a Thomistic sense. In this,
I'm also going to want to know what he means by a Thomistic sense of natural theology, by the way, because that's very loosely stated, a Thomistic sense. Because I mean, we're basically taking, from those church fathers that I mentioned, especially from St. John of Damascus, we're going to be taking what they teach on this matter, and that's what we're going to affirm when it comes to natural knowledge of God. Okay.
this context, most Orthodox
and also St. Boethius, by the way,
writers that discuss or exegete the passages, they will actually refer to this in a Christological way or in a reference to the energies of Christ. So in other words, the heavens declare the glory of God. The glory of God is actually not a creature. In fact, it is a energy that the saints themselves perceive and participate in. The world displays, for example, according to Romans 1, the divine dunamis. The dunamis in the Greek, if you would look to, for example, the famous book by scholar Michael Barnes.
That just means
Barnes notes in the power of God in quite a bit of detail that the theology of dunamis in the Cappadocians and in particular in St. Gregory of Nazianzus is fundamentally about the potentia that God has that he doesn't always necessarily actualize. In other words, God does not have to create, for example, all the possible worlds. He only actualized this world, and he did that on the basis of the logi that he willed to actualize. There's a great paper by Seraphim Hamilton in our Discord at Rule of Faith that I will post below as well about this position and issue with regard to the actualized logi. So in other words, Barnes notes that what is shown in the created order does not exercise. God does not exercise every power necessarily. Another example of this would be when the Son becomes incarnate. There's a kenosis that occurs, right, according to St. Paul in the Philippians. And in this kenosis, the Son becomes a baby, right? He doesn't destroy the world at the same time, for example, as he walks on water. And what this shows us is that we can't have a strict identification thesis doctrine of actus purus, because it would be then impossible for Christ to undergo a kenotic state, enter into a mode of being proper to one hypostasis coming into time and space in a unique mode that the other two hypostases don't do. So in other words, natural theology right away would propose a problem in terms of its actus purus presuppositions in regard to the doctrine of the incarnation.
I mean, when it comes to actus purus, it's really a modern Orthodox objection. This isn't an objection that historically Orthodox have had. You can actually read Tikhon Pino in his book on essence and energies, and you can read, he talks about this in a section, is basically Palamas and the Orthodox in general have accepted the idea of actus purus, but the incarnation would pose no difficulty to the idea of actus purus. I mean, unless you were saying that somehow there was a modification of the divine nature of Christ, which to my knowledge, I don't think any Orthodox are going to affirm. So I'm not sure how this is going to follow.
For example, in Ed Fazer's book, Five Proofs, Fazer literally says in the chapter on the Neoplatonic proof that if this is the case, and he thinks it is a good argument for God, supposedly, then this God cannot enter into time and space because that would be to undergo change for that God, for that essence, right? But,
well, in his divine nature.
Did Dr. Fazer not think about the possibility of how that might affect or negate or preclude the doctrine of the incarnation?
I'm sure he did.
One hypostasis does enter into the mode of being in time and space.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Dr. Fazer, but I'm sure he did.
For example, again, the action of creating the world by Christ is distinct from the action of walking on water. And neither of those actions is...
Well, walking on water was an action of his humanity because nature is the principle by which hypostasis acts. So I'm sure Jay wouldn't say that this was something which was an activity of his deity walking on water. I mean, I hope so.
Is the same as destroying the world in the conflagration. So all of these things I think are important to keep in mind. There's an essay that I would recommend, a paper by Dr. Bradshaw, where Dr. Bradshaw goes into quite a bit of exegesis in the Old and New Testament about this issue of the energeia and then being really distinct in multiple scriptural passages. So the energies doctrine is not grounded in the Cappadocians or in Palamos. It's actually grounded in the New Testament, Old Testament theology itself, particularly Paul's epistles, where he talks about the energeia. Trent's position, as I've heard it outlined in multiple debates, including with Ben Watkins, is what I would classify, not with the intention of mischaracterizing him. He can freely correct me at any point if he thinks I've misread him. Is something akin to a classical foundationalist approach. In the classical foundationalist approach, especially the Matt Dillahunty debate, we see a basic empiricist narrative that the classic Aristotelian type arguments for change, act, potency. The problem here is that these all contain tremendous metaphysical baggage. God just is unlimited being itself, he says. God is not composed. God is not in time and space. The observations of the world around us through just observing sense data then can lead us to this supposed conclusions about this deity. He even says this is a first actualizer with no potentia, etc. This has, of course, been subject to many examples of critique in the academic literature, particularly regarding the not just modal collapse, but also what's called the identity thesis. Radegawitz's famous PhD thesis on this goes into great detail to show that, in fact, the Roman Catholic doctrine of identity thesis is really part and parcel, especially in Aquinas, with what we see in Eunomius. And in fact, Basil's arguments against Eunomius are quite the contrary to what we might expect, right? Basil.
No, I mean, when you read St. Basil and Contra Eunomius, he's actually, this is actually quite interesting because in Contra Eunomius, he denies that the various attributes of God are what are called polynyms. And this is actually a reference to chapter 1 of the Categories of Aristotle. And so he's following in the peripatetic tradition when he's interpreting, our teaching on the relationship between the attributes of God. And a polynym is just a synonym. I mean, that's what we call it in English. I mean, that's usually how it's translated. You can read Categories 1 about this, but all St. Basil is denying is that these aren't synonyms, which is exactly what St. Thomas and exactly what all of us are going to affirm. And actually, in a certain passage in Contra Eunomius, St. Basil actually concedes that Eunomius is positing correct philosophy in terms of an affirmation of divine simplicity. I mean, he's conceding that, and he's simply denying the thesis that all of the different attributes of God are synonymous, which we absolutely agree with.
Basil does not accept Eunomian or Neoplatonic definition of simplicity, which underlies the very doctrine that I've heard Trent outline. Now, the eternal actualizer point is actually ridiculed by St. Basil in Hexameron 2, where Basil says that if it's the case that God is an eternal actualizer, then it stands to reason, like Aristotle thought, that there's also an eternal world that he actualizes. For him to have any meaning as eternal actualizer requires an eternal other than himself for him to perpetually move and actualize. This, in fact, is why Phaser himself has given up the...
Yeah, I mean, he's denying Aristotle's doctrine of eternal creation. I mean, we agree upon that. That's really because Aristotle didn't know about or didn't really posit the possibility of an act which is formally immanent and virtually transient, which actually, if you want to see a back and forth on that, if you look at Astro and Jay actually discussed a act which is formally immanent, virtually transient. And Ed Phaser actually messes up on this point. He doesn't hold the traditional Thomistic response to this question of why creation isn't eternal.
The project of using this line of causal chains or reasoning back to a first cause as if you could prove or demonstrate creation as a specific ex nihilo action. In fact, Phaser just submits and says, we can't do that. It doesn't.
I mean, when it comes to the eternity of creation, which is a completely different question right here, St. Thomas says that when it comes to the eternity of creation, and he's, I think there's about like question 45 of Prima Pars, he says that when it comes to the eternality of creation, that's not something that we can demonstrably know from creatures, that this isn't something which is eternal. He says that we can give certain arguments from fittingness, but we can't demonstrate from nature. It's actually a matter of revelation when it comes to the eternality of the world. And he actually has an entire obsculum on this point, which is just called On the Eternality of the World. Let me double check to make sure I got the title right on this. on the eternality of the world. So he has a whole obsculum on this if you guys wanted to check that out.
Doesn't work. In fact, the problem at root here really isn't about that. It's about the meaning of the term and usage of the classical theistic attributes. The problem is outlined in the paper that
But I mean, also right here, I mean, debating on whether Christians should accept natural theology, it really doesn't matter because I mean, there's different views of within Catholicism of certain attributes of God. I mean, what the famous disputes between the Thomists and the Scotists on the manner in which the attributes are distinct, the specific debate between the Thomists and the Suarezians on the way in which ad extra operations in God work. I mean, there's different options and different articulations within Catholicism. So, but this kind of, I think, obscures the fact that this is a debate on natural theology in general, which shouldn't be, which particular doctrines about natural theology are you holding? Which particular conclusions do you draw? But rather, this should be a question of whether this, as a methodical discipline, is proper. So I don't really know where he's going with it here.
I would recommend Dr. Garaby's paper, which goes into great detail in demonstrating logically and formally the actual fallacies involved in theistic, in the idea of a generic theism, the idea that natural theology can actually arise to on the basis of theory-neutral predicates, theory-neutral attributes.
I mean, if he's saying that we can know from creatures that there is a God, what do you mean by generic theism? Because he says that we accept, simply speaking, that natural theology is a thing. You really can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, well, on the one hand, we agree that because Scripture obviously teaches that he can say eternal dunamis, okay, whatever, and deity. I mean, that's the rest of the sentence. We also know his deity from creatures, so that we're inexcusable. So on the one hand, you can't say, well, yeah, we don't necessarily agree with it. There's arguments for God that are brought up by dozens, if not more, of the church fathers. You can't say that on the one hand. And then on the other hand, say, well, we don't believe in this generic theism. Like, what is that supposed to mean? What exactly is that supposed to mean? That we can both know God and not know God from creatures? We can know God's existence and not know God's existence from creatures? I mean, how would this not be a, quote, generic theism? It really doesn't make any sense. And maybe it's something that I'm missing in his terminology. That could be perfectly possible. But I'm not really seeing how this is convincing.
The omniscience, omnipresence, eternality, freedom, goodness, creator status, sustaining status, and personal status of this deity, as well as according to, for example.
Wait. How was I doing that? I literally didn't even know what I didn't even know what your problem was with me, bro. I had no idea. You just started attacking me out of nowhere. What did you dress your kids as for Halloween? My daughter was a fairy and my son was a skeleton. Okay. And it was based. It was very based.
For example, Swinburne as a typical Thomist, that this deity is also deserves reverence and worship. This deity also is.
Yeah, but I mean, deserving of reverence and worship, and that you know that God deserves reverence and worship from creatures. I mean, that's basically exactly what Romans 1 says. I mean, we can go back and we can read it again. We can also read the patristic accounts of this. I mean, you can read, there's many fathers who comment on Romans. Just for example, you can look at St. John Chrysostom and his homilies on Romans. I mean, they're there. So I'm not sure how this is supposed to be convincing besides quoting certain secondary sources who you're appealing to and saying that these refute our ideas.
It's the same in all the monotheistic religions because they have similar predicates. This is, of course, a fallacy. The fact that these different religious systems have similar predicates for the deity, it does not follow logically that they are referring to the same deity. But this is, in fact, what underlies all natural theological argumentation about the Abrahamic monotheistic faiths. And in fact, I've heard Trent argue many times that the Abrahamic or monotheistic religion is a common core generic type of theism that we see in these authors. For example, it doesn't work to say that all the predicates are referring to the same referent merely because they have different, because they have different systems, because I can give you multiple examples, such as the quantifier shift fallacy, where, for example, if we were looking at the fact that because monotheistic religions all claim to believe in one God, it does not follow logically that they believe in or refer to the same God. Again, that is the quantifier shift fallacy. We can think of examples like
Yeah, but I mean, that's not what we're doing here, though. we're not saying, well, because we all posit similar or the same attributes, that we're talking about the same, referent point. Like if I said, I'm white and Mr. J. Athanasius in the chat is white as well. Therefore, if we're talking about a white man, we're referring to the same individual. Like that's not what we're doing. Rather, we're saying that we're reasoning from the effects to a certain cause, this first cause of creation, and we're doing the same reasoning process to the same object. It would almost be like if we were all sitting here, I have my white monster can right here. We're all looking at this white monster can right here. And since we're all pointing towards that, just as if we're reasoning from creatures to a cause, therefore we're referring to the same cause, and we're looking at the same thing. I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're not saying just because there's the same attributes, that this happens to be, the same reference point. That's not at all what we're saying.
Every girl loves one boy, therefore every girl loves the same boy. Or every person is born of a woman, therefore every person is born of the same woman. It's an obvious fallacy and doesn't logically follow. This also relates to what in linguistic philosophy or logic is called the non-substitutivity of identicals in linguistic intentional context, right? So in other words, we can't just substitute words as if they mean the same thing, because they even if they might refer to the same thing. So for example, we could think of an example where I list to you, I'm thinking of a man who is a famous Greek, a famous lover and promoter of philosophy, a very wealthy patrician, and his name is Aristotle. Now, we might both intend to have the same referent, but in fact, we aren't thinking of the same thing, because I might be thinking of Aristotle, the philosopher in the ancient world. You might be thinking of Aristotle Onassis, the famous billionaire of recent memory. These are good examples, as well as something like we could give another example, such as the one true God is the Trinity. Aristotle believed in one God, therefore Aristotle believed in the Trinity. Well, obviously that's not true. No one would accept that. And what that shows is that you can't substitute the identity of identical words without looking at the intentional epistemic context. And this is, again, just another problem that plagues.
I mean, this is fine, and we agree with this, but we would just simply go back to the original point: is what is the method in which we're going and knowing this thing. And if it's the same method, it's the same conclusion with the same premises and the same reasoning process, then we're all reaching the same conclusion.
The assumptions of basic generic theism. The other problem, of course, is that it ought to lead to perennialism. If there's a common core religion, which is actually the presupposition of natural theology in terms of its monotheistic predicates, then we are bypassing the Trinity, and we're actually arguing for something other than the content of the systems of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So in other words, it would be a fourth core position that is the real position, distinct from the other three. And in fact,
I mean, this kind of misunderstands what I said and I laid out in the beginning, is that we have the natural order, and then we have the supernatural order. We have the hypostatic order too, but we can just do natural and supernatural order. So when it comes to, for example, if you said, like, we have natural chastity and then we have Christian chastity, which these two are technically formally identical. Like, they're both virtues which reside in the concupiscible appetite and regulate the sexual faculties. But one of them is motivated from a higher cause and subordinated to a higher end. Well, it doesn't mean that, that there's some sort of like distinct fundamental thing outside of these two that's a different grounds. It's rather that one of them is modally distinct from the other one. If you guys get what I'm saying. So this is the distinction when it comes to a sort of natural theology of the pagan who just has the light of reason, and then a natural theology that is done by a Christian who has the superior light of faith, which is regulating this virtue in order to be meritorious to eternal life.
In fact, as we saw in the Swinburne example, the attributes, one of those attributes he lists is that we should obey God. Well, the obedience required to God is mutually exclusive in these different systems. So a Muslim doesn't allow that you can obey the same God in the same way in Christianity, even though they might say or believe falsely that we have the same God. In fact, I could just simply refer to.
I mean, the idea is that there's a principle of obedience. Like when you talk to a Muslim and you're evangelizing a Muslim, and you say, you go to them, you do a general sort of apologetic approach, and you're like, okay, well, God is okay. We agree that there's a first cause and last end of all things. We can know this from the light of nature, and we say, well, if God reveals something, then you should obey it, right? Like, yes. Well, if God reveals something, you should obey it. at that point, I mean, you have that general principle, which is motivating that conversation in the first place. You couldn't even have a conversation with them unless there was this sort of agreed upon premise that, what you are doing with Christian revelation is there's a claim that this is coming from God. And obviously, if we can somehow indicate through what are called the motives of credibility that God actually revealed this thing, then you should listen to it. I mean, there wouldn't be able to even be apologetic encounters, which we see all throughout the New Testament. We see all throughout the patristic age. I mean, there wouldn't even be these apologetic encounters unless that was something which was presupposed. Can you elaborate on the comment about Boethius? What about the comment about Boethius? So when it came to Boethius was a major translator of Aristotle and wrote various commentaries on Aristotle and certain opuscula. I mean, that's really what I meant, is to point him out as, and he's really the sort of link that the medievals, the Latin medieval scholastics have with the Aristotelian peripatetic tradition, because Boethius actually was quite well read in the rest of the peripatetics around his time who were commenting on Aristotle. He was providing his own comments on Aristotle. I big dumb confused. Send more super chats, K bro. I don't know why you like assumed weird malice of me. I really don't like. That was the thing, is you just like commented under something that I said, and it was like weirdly flaming me. I mean, you like double quote tweeted hours apart like a tweet from me. It's kind of weird, dude. Kind of being weird. Hello, Rabbi. Greetings from Schizoland. You look a lot like Kamala Harris today. Question: how many shekels should I pay as a dowry for my cat girl wife? Okay, thank you for the super chat, Peter Diamond.
To Jesus's explication of this notion in the New Testament, when from John 5 to John 9, this very question comes up, where Jesus says that even if you think or reference the Father, you don't have any access to the Father apart from me. And ultimately, what is the goal of apologetics? Just to mentally convince people of a position? No, it's actually to convince them logically that there are good reasons, or only good reasons, or that Christianity is the only position that should be accepted. In other words, we aren't.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to distinguish on this point. Because clearly the New Testament, as we saw, says that they know God from creatures, and these are pagans who are being rebuked here. And then on the other hand, we have throughout the Gospels, our Lord saying, you do not know the Father except through me, through the revelation that comes through him. So here, I think what would be clear is that there are two orders or two different types of knowledge which are being posited, unless you want to accept the contradiction. I think that's the point that we're bringing forward, is we're distinguishing between two different types of knowledge here. This is seen again through the apologetics of the fathers, through the different arguments that they give, their general way of arguing with others. I mean, they accept this method.
Intending to create not more philosophers in a Hellenic pagan sense. We're actually intending to convert people to Christ.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we agree with that. And we're saying that there's of course an incompleteness due to the will of God subordinating these different orders. There's an incompleteness even to the natural order if it doesn't reach its end, which God has willed it to have in the supernatural order. Like, absolutely, we would say that. And on the other hand, we would also say that none of this natural knowledge is at all meritorious. None of it's meritorious, and none of it is sort of disposing for justification in a positive way. None of it is something which is bringing us to heaven. I mean, this literally is, it is in a very strong way dry and barren knowledge. And I mean, we're absolutely agreeing on that point, for sure.
Now, when I hear Trent's approach, really what I want to drill down to is that Trent's approach is based on a presupposition about how epistemology works. And Trent basically follows the ancient medieval world's approach that metaphysics is prior to epistemology. Of course, after human Kant, the whole modern world questions this and actually just asks for a justification for assuming that you can do your metaphysics before you do the legwork of your epistemology. In other words, you have now a gigantic epistemic bootstrapping agenda that you have to get through if you want to demonstrate any of your first principles or arguments that you would make on the basis of those first principles.
I mean, but Aristotle does do that, and the medieval commenters do that. I mean, if you read books 3 and 4 of the Metaphysics, and then you read the commentaries which are given on books 3 and 4 of the Metaphysics, they're going to give what's called, on the one hand, an indirect argument. On the second hand, what's called an an improperly illative direct argument. I mean, they're going to give arguments for these first principles. So this is something that they recognized. I mean, these were extremely advanced philosophical reflections. These weren't idiots. I mean, they understood this issue that we need to have what's called defensive metaphysics. I mean, that's what they called it, defensive metaphysics. They called the rest of metaphysics ostensive metaphysics. So they were doing these things. So yeah, there are justifications and defenses. Simply stating that there isn't or there wasn't, I mean, that's just incorrect.
So because he follows the peripatetic axiom of Aquinas accepts in De Veritate the peripatetic axiom, at least as far as I can tell, Trent accepts it. I haven't heard anything that makes me think he doesn't. Then the peripatetic axiom literally states that anything that is, there's nothing in the intellect that's not first in the senses. And of course, the devastating critique of this that many modern epistemologists have pointed out is that that proposition itself is not evident in sense experience. So in other words, now Trent is in the horns of a dilemma, because if he wants to argue on the assumption of Aristotelian anthropology and epistemology, then he's stuck in the position of affirming what Aristotle says in posterior analytics, prior analytics, physics, and I'll reference these later, that there's two ways that we go about knowing things. One is that which is better known in itself, and that which is better known by us, right? That which is better known by us refers to the empirical evidence that we have referring back to the first cause.
All right, Jay, try to wrap up your opening statement.
How much time do I have?
Technically the time's run out, but I don't want to cut you off from whatever your final thought was.
Okay, so essentially this results in, I'll get to this later perhaps, but just a way to restate the point that the peripatetic axiom itself is not self-justifying or self-referential. And so this would mean that really none of Trent's arguments or claims from natural theology would get off the ground until he deals with the multiple well-known problems. This is my closing statement here of this in modern epistemology, such as the myth of the given, the underdetermination of data, the inability to justify the peripatetic axiom itself, that there are properly basic beliefs, that there's an external world, that the external world causally impresses itself upon our senses. So that's where I'll end it there.
All right, thank you, Jay. And I think in the future, what I'll do is if we have 10 seconds left, I'll just kind of make the screen look like this, and you can see like, okay, 10 seconds left. But yeah, thank you, Jay. Trent, are you ready to go?
I'm
Okay. I mean, that was classic Jay Dyer. That was just classic Jay Dyer. So let's see how Trent does. I'm curious to see what Trent does, actually. Trent has a Gemmy video about prots. Which one is it? Which one was it? Trent versus Jay. I thought Trent refused to debate him because he's uncharitable. No, I mean, that's not what Trent said. I mean, Trent agreed. Trent eventually agreed to it. Okay, bro. I remember this kind of threw off the debate. What are you talking about? Okay. I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, why are there 185 watching but only 105 likes? I don't think I really mogged Jay Dyer at all. I mean, I guess I just brought up pretty general points. I guess.
ready.
All right. Whenever you start talking, I'll start the timer.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank Swan for hosting the debate. I'm really glad Jay's participating in it. For the purpose of the debate, we can define natural theology using a definition from the First Vatican Council. God, the source and end of all things, can be known with certainty from the consideration of created things by the natural power of human reason. Eastern Orthodox philosopher Richard Swinburne describes natural theology as the task of reasoning about God, quote, from propositions which theists and atheists alike can recognize as obviously true. Now, let me be clear that people can come to know God apart from natural theology, like through religious experience. And human reason cannot cause us to desire God's offer of salvation. The Catechism of the Catholic Church puts it this way. Man's faculties make him capable of coming to a knowledge of the existence of a personal God. But for man to be able to enter into real intimacy with him, God willed both to reveal himself to man and to give him the grace of being able to welcome this revelation in faith. The proofs of God's existence, however, can predispose one to faith and help one to see that faith is not opposed to reason. In the rebuttal...
Yeah, I mean, basically, this is boom classic. This is why I like the Catechism, actually, because it starts off with what's called fundamental theology. Fundamental theology is to theology basically what, okay, thank you. Yo, streams by Vibe and No Cap for real. Okay, thank you. It starts off with fundamental theology. Fundamental theology basically is to theology what epistemology is to the rest of philosophy. I mean, it's the foundation. And this is really going to be concerned with the nature of revelation, like how we can make a judgment of credibility of revelation, and a bunch of different things like this. And it begins with that, which is how traditional theology manuals begin. So it's absolute gem. I freaking love it. It's amazing.
Period, I'll address why the case that Jay gave doesn't refute natural theology. But for now, I'm going to offer 5 reasons why Christians should not reject natural theology. Number 1, the Bible teaches that we have freedom in Christ. St. Paul writes, "For freedom, Christ has set us free." 1 Corinthians 10, Paul says Christians could eat meat offered to idols. Romans 14, they can celebrate Jewish feast days. Christians could also not do these things if it made them uncomfortable, but they couldn't demand other Christians do the same. This means believers are free to pursue any kind of theology as long as it doesn't violate the teachings of the church. So if my opponent says Christians have a moral duty to abandon natural theology, he'd have to show where the church has taught this. And I don't think he's made that claim tonight. It's the default position that we can pursue it, unless we have a good reason not to. But if Jay says we have a prudential duty, like it's just not a good idea, then he needs to show why the greatest thinkers in church history, like Aquinas, Augustine, Gregory the Theologian, John of Damascus, Athanasius, the Apostles, and our Lord Jesus Christ, why they were wrong in using this method to demonstrate truths about God. Reason number 2, the church has infallibly taught the validity of natural theology. No ecumenical council has ever condemned natural theology, and the First Vatican Council infallibly declared, if anyone says that the one true God, our Creator and Lord, cannot be known with certainty from the things that have been made.
I'm kind of confused by this, actually. I'm confused by the first argument, because Jay would just say that it's simply wrong. Confused by this the second argument, because Jay wouldn't. I mean, the second argument's, I guess, fine because of the most brilliant minds, and some of these are authorities that we accept. Confused by the third argument because Jay doesn't accept the Vatican I and its authority. So I'm kind of confused here, Trent.
By the natural light of human reason, let him be anathema. So especially if you're Catholic, you cannot accept my opponent's position tonight. Number 3, natural theology has a long history in the Christian tradition, both in the Western and Eastern Church. St. Paul declared in Romans 1:20, ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature, namely his eternal power and deity, has been clearly perceived in the things that have been made. My opponent agrees.
Yeah, I really, like, when it comes to Romans 1, I really don't know how he gets around it, Jay. Because, yes, he's going to point to, the dunamis, that just means power. It's dynamite, same root right there. But it's also going to talk about the deity of God is clearly known from the things that are made. And when you look at, you can, for example, a really early one is Athenagoras. Athenagoras, I think he died in like the Athenagoras. When did Athenagoras die? 190. Early apologist in the church. There's many early apologists who had the philosopher's robe. And these individuals gave, the same type of arguments that we give to this day when it comes to the existence of God. So I'm very confused how Jay gets around that, because I mean, things like, let's say he makes the point about us having a common reference. How would one be able to consistently hold what is being said in that verse unless this is assuming that we have a common reference towards God? Some know him from creation and then reject him, and some know him from create. Well, all know him from creation and reject him. It's kind of the point of Romans 1, and then it's only through the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ that we're able to be redeemed from this fall into sin. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of it. And I mean, also you can see this on the apologetic sphere too, is that when you have the evangelism of people who are non-Christian, non-Jews throughout the New Testament, they're saying things like, hey, like you're rejecting what God said, or God said to do this. And I mean, by that very assumption, I mean, if you are communicating to somebody and you say, like, John said that, and they're thinking about a completely different John, and they don't know the John you're talking about, like, that would be a ridiculous sort of thing to try to communicate to that individual. You guys get what I'm saying? So, I mean, we could expand this to basically all of the apologetic encounters that are happening in the New Testament that aren't explicitly to people, from Israel who have received divine revelation. It seems like a pretty open and shut case, but he didn't. What frustrated me about Jay's opening statement is he said, well, we don't, simply speaking, reject natural theology. Like, we don't simply speaking reject it. And he goes on to say a bunch of other things, but he doesn't clarify, okay, what is the sense where you do actually accept it? And what are the sense in which you think that the Eastern Fathers are doing these things? And like, how do they differ than what we say? And I mean, he brought up a few points about, okay, he disagrees and thinks that the fathers disagree with certain things which are taught about certain attributes of God by the Thomists. It's like, okay, well, that's not what the debate is about. The debate's about natural theology. So I'm really kind of confused about what's going on here. How does Van Til get around Romans? Jay is just repacking his Baptist seminary education. Was told that directly by someone who attended with him. Van Til? I haven't actually read much Van Til or Bonson. I mean, I remember back in the day I tried to, but back then I was like far too stupid to understand any of that stuff. I mean, I did actually think about like a month or two ago, like what if I picked up like Bonson's classic like synthesis work on presuppositionalism and read it again. I probably would understand it this time around. So okay, so when did the ortho bros start using presuppositional apologetics? That method was common when I used to be a Calvinist. Is this something Jay started, or was it common before him? Great stream. Thank you for the super chat. I think it was something that was before Jay. To my understanding, that was kind of something in the waters of Orthodox, Neo-Palamite 20th century things. I don't think this was something that was completely just a J. Dyer invention. But I will be back in 1 second.
Pope Benedict XVI said that mental prayer is an ordinary means that enables the disciple of Jesus to live in intimacy with the divine teacher. Yet, how does one engage in mental prayer? One of the greatest masters of the spiritual life was Saint Ignatius of Loyola. In the 19th century, a certain Jesuit priest decided to write a complete guide to mental prayer, patterned on the works of Saint Ignatius. Check out this work on Amazon, completely typeset under the title A Brief Guide to Mental Prayer According to the Mind of Saint Ignatius.
Okay, I'm back. What did I miss, guys? What did I miss? Okay, anyways, Van Til presuppositionalism in J. It's Van Til presuppositionalism in J. Yeah, I need to read more about. I need to read like actual Van Til Bonson stuff. That's become a lacuna. I kind of gave up reading about it once I became Catholic. Okay, let's continue.
Paul is drawing from the deuterocanonical book of wisdom, which says in chapter 13, from the greatness and beauty of created things comes a corresponding perception of their creator. Even critics of natural theology like Andrew Moore say it is unquestionable.
Somebody said, I think you missed my super chat. Let me see. DB. Oh, what do you think about using the tag not as what? A proof for God, but a fitting argument for the assent of faith. Like saying, since it's more coherent when our worldview is based on God revealing rather than our own sense data. I mean, really, I've answered this a few times, but when it comes to like transcendental argument, I mean, I think that, and I think that there's others who have said this before, but I think that basically it's just trying to get at a form of the fourth way. So if you read, for example, in the end of Prima Pars, when St. Thomas is talking about the agent intellect, and he talks about how the agent intellect is a participation in the eternal light, because this is something which necessarily posits, as a sort of particular participation. It's gonna posit, the maximum perfection in its genus as extrinsic formal cause and deficient cause of it. Or I mean, it says the same thing about the law, moral law, and about prima secundae question like 100 to 110. Well, 109 is when Treatise on Grace starts, to 108-ish. I mean, it's going to bring up things like this. So I don't necessarily, I guess I don't necessarily oppose it in theory, using it. I think there is some like rhetorical strength to it as well. Okay, Continue.
That knowledge of God is here ascribed to man in the cosmos. Paul also told the Greeks that wanted to worship him in Acts 14 to turn to the true God, who, quote, did not leave himself without witness, for he did good and gave you from heaven rains and fruitful seasons.
Yeah, like for example, with that, this is my question for people who are positing this. Like when Paul says turn to the true God, like how is that supposed to mean anything for the people that he's talking to? You know? Like how is this supposed to have any sort of like conceptual content? Because when you're communicating something with words, like I say something to you, let's say I say dog to you. There is the concept of dog that exists in my intellect. There's the word that goes out to you that I'm expressing by a certain sign, which is a word, and you understand dog, and then that pings off of a concept with your intellect. If I want to have meaningful communication with you, I'm going to use concepts that you have, and I'm going to use certain conventional signs that we share in common. So I don't understand how you could read something like that and say, well, no, they were just kind of pointing to something else. Unless you want to say that, St. Paul was kind of just ineffectually communicating in this way, which I don't even really get.
In these verses, we have the beginnings of teleological or design arguments for God. St. Maximus the Confessor said, the saints learned of the Creator's existence from the things created by him. Design arguments can be found in Clement of Alexandria, Theophilus of Antioch, Augustine, and other church fathers, though with different illustrations. St. John Chrysostom says that just as a ship won't last a mile without a crew, the universe could not be ordered without a supreme intelligence guiding it. St. Basil the Great said, quote, the world is a work of art, displayed for the observation of all people, to make them know him who created it. Gregory the theologian gives an argument similar to the modern fine-tuning argument, which says the laws of nature are not the product of chance or necessity, so they must have been designed. Gregory writes of the world, do these belong to chance or to something else? Surely not to chance. And what can this something else be but God? Thus, reason that proceeds from God leads us up to God through visible things, which is the task of natural theology.
So Flashbang sent me the worst. He said this is the worst interpretation ever. Although Romans 1:20 is the typical proof text for natural theology and generic theism, it actually is a reference specifically to Christ being revealed as God through creation, because Christ is the power of God. See 1 Corinthians 1:24. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. So they are without excuse. That is a crazy reading. Wow. I just want to look at all of the, because where is he getting this from? Because I've seen church fathers interpret Romans 1:24 this, like not this way, but I've seen them interpret Romans 1. Like I've read a few patristic commentaries on Romans because that was something which I was extremely interested in. I've never seen anything interpreted in this way. That like misses the whole point. Misses the whole point of Romans 1. Wow. Makes no sense in context. Just read the actual letter. He's talking about those who turn to idols. Yeah, exactly. Wow. This is they will really do anything. I mean, and this is just not at all patristic. I mean, that's just kind of a fact. And we don't even have to go to Romans 1 if we did want to. We could go to, examples and acts of evangelization.
St. Gregory of Nyssa said, should he say there is no God, then from the consideration of the skillful and wise economy of the universe, he will be brought to acknowledge that there is a certain overmastering power manifested through these channels. So St. Gregory talks about dealing with an atheist. My opponent has previously said natural theology can't prove there's only one God. That's not what Gregory of Nyssa thought. He continued, if on the other hand, he should have no doubt as to the existence of deity, but should be inclined to entertain the presumption of a plurality of gods, then we will adopt against him some such train of reasoning as this, and that includes arguments from monotheism. Paul said in Acts 17, men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious, for as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. So in this incident, Paul acknowledged that the Greeks used reason to correctly arrive at the truth that God exists, but they were ignorant about God's saving nature. In order to find further common ground with them, Paul quoted Greek poets who said, he is not far from each one of us, for in him we live and move and have our being. From this, we see the seeds of the cosmological argument, specifically the argument from motion. For example, in the Ambiguous, St. Maximus the Confessor says, nothing moves without a cause. Then no being is unmoved, except the prime mover. St. John of Damascus.
Which he's getting from the end of the Physics by Aristotle. Told you. All these guys, they're Aristotelians. That's why Jay got mad at me for saying it, but that's why I said that all of the Greek fathers are scholastics. That's why I said it. I was being a bit cheeky about it, but it served its purpose.
Damascus said, "For everything that is moved by another thing. And who again is it that moves that? And so on to infinity, till we at length arrive at something motionless. For the first mover is motionless, and that is the deity." This is about 700 years before the time of Aquinas. And according to theologian Thomas Torrance, quote, "It was, in fact, on the foundations laid by John of Damascus that Western thinkers like St. Thomas based their natural theology."
See, I told you, didn't I say that earlier? Pull the clip. Pull the clip. I said that earlier. Trent is vindicating me. Because I did say earlier that it's actually specifically St. John of Damascus who the medieval scholastics are pulling from. See, I told you, pull the clip from earlier. Wagner vindicated yet again. Thank you, Trent Horn.
You can also find the beginning of a moral argument for God's existence in Romans chapter 2, 14 through 15, where Paul says Gentiles who don't have the law, Mosaic law, quote, show that what the law requires is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness. St. Athanasius argues in a similar way, saying of idolaters, "For neither was the law for the Jews alone. They were for all the world a holy school of the knowledge of God." Athanasius even said in the same passage that the holiness of the saints could be sufficient evidence that God exists. Finally, let's consider the history of the argument from miracles. The Old Testament prophet Elijah demonstrated the superiority of Yahweh by challenging the prophets of Baal to a miracle contest. Our Lord told his critics in John 10, "If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me, and I am in the Father." Jesus is saying that even if you don't believe his words, his miraculous deeds should be enough evidence to show he is the Messiah. In 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3 through 8, Paul presents a list of witnesses of Christ's resurrection to answer doubts people had about the general resurrection. He also noted some of these witnesses were still alive, presumably so people could investigate them. St. John of Damascus said arguments for God are necessary for people who did not witness miracles firsthand and their converting power. He
So true. So true.
wrote, "But since the wickedness of the evil one has prevailed so mightily against man's nature, as even to drive some into denying the existence of God, so the disciples of the Lord and his apostles, made wise by the Holy Spirit and working wonders in his power and grace, took them captive in the net of miracles and drew them up out of the depths of ignorance to the light of the knowledge of God." Finally, the First Vatican Council infallibly declared, "If anyone says that miracles can never be known with certainty, nor can the divine origin of the Christian religion be proved from them, let him be anathema."
Yeah, but I mean, okay. So I guess to give a little critique to Trent, that sneeze was transcendental intervention to keep you from pointing at the message. Yeah, real. But I guess to give a little critique, when it comes to Vatican I, and I suggest everyone read De Filius. I mean, it's an amazing document. It's a really splendid work of fundamental theology is really what it's about. It's talking about revelation, and it's talking about revelation, which is God speaking to man. This is distinct from the knowledge of God, which is from reason. You have revelation from God, which, even to talk to somebody about revelation from God, as I pointed out earlier, you need to have this idea of God, which is present in them. That's something which is necessary. So you have revelation, the speaking of God to men, and then this obviously is going to come through, if it's public revelation, what are called divine legates. So God has divine messengers, which he's sending to men. These are the prophets, the apostles, so on and so forth. Our Lord himself, according to his humanity. These are being sent in order to communicate some message. Now, obviously, it would be utterly idiotic for us to just kind of trust the plan when you have somebody saying that I'm speaking for God. It's like, oh yeah, okay, you're speaking for God. I guess I'll just trust you on this one. Like that would be idiotic. So you have what are called motives of credibility. An example of motives of credibility are miracles. I mean, that's what Vatican I is talking about. It's not talking about an argument for the existence of God from miracles. Okay, but let's continue.
So we see in the West and the Eastern Church, going back 2,000 years, a constant uniform belief that the natural power of human reason can lead people to understand basic truths about God, his existence, and nature. Number 4, natural theology is superior to its alternatives. My opponent advocates for a kind of presuppositionalism that claims it is impossible to justify belief in logic, knowledge, or morality without presupposing the God of what he calls Orthodox Christian faith exists. But my opponent's case for presuppositionalism is refuted by the following dilemma. Either Jay is arguing from created things to God, and so he's doing natural theology, or he's arguing from the assumption God exists to created things in order to prove God exists, which is the logical fallacy of circular reasoning. Consider the first option in the dilemma. William Lane Craig's
should I pray imprecatory psalms against Kamala Harris? That's real. That's real. Pray. Make sure you always pray your imprecatory psalms. But yeah, this is fair. Fair for Trent to bring up. I mean, Jay is just going to say that all knowledge ends up being necessarily circular. That's at least all the responses I've gotten from Van Tillians when you bring this up.
Moral argument for God goes like this. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Objective moral values and duties do exist. Therefore, God exists. It sounds like, if you read my opponent's argument one way, he's just taken out moral values and duties and replaced it with logic, knowledge, and morality. If God does not exist, these things don't exist. They do exist, so God exists. But if that's the case, he's doing natural theology. He has to prove logic, morality, and knowledge exist, and they have no natural explanations for these things. But maybe Jay is saying that actually, no, our ability to even have knowledge of these things or any knowledge whatsoever presupposes the God of Orthodox Christian faith. And so that needs to be the first premise of our argument.
I've always also been confused by this because they're going to modify the statement, not only like that God exists, but the God of Orthodox Christianity. Like, what does he mean by this? What does he mean by this? I'm not sure how the existence of the moral law is going to necessarily presuppose the dogmatic definitions of black or nay or something like that. The filioque is false or something like that. Like, hey guys, I have knowledge of things. Logic exists. Metaphysics exist. Ethics exist. Therefore, the filioque is false. What does he mean by this? What does he mean by this?
Argument. So instead of starting with created things and reasoning to the creator, we get the other horn of the dilemma. Jay starts with the creator and uses that to show knowledge is possible so we can know the creator exists. But as the Christian philosopher William Lane Craig says, presuppositionalism is guilty of a logical howler. It commits the informal fallacy of petitio principii, or begging the question, for it advocates presupposing the truth of Christian theism in order to prove Christian theism. We know this is the case because we could ask Jay, well, why couldn't we start with another presupposition, like atheistic nihilism that says we're mistaken and we live in an illogical, amoral, unintelligible universe? Atheistic Platonism, which says logic, knowledge, and morality are just abstract concepts or brute facts. Polytheism, non-Christian monotheism, or many forms of Christian theism my opponent rejects, like Van Tillian, Calvinist presuppositionalism, or just presupposing the God of Catholicism, who's absolutely simple, exists. And once again, the dilemma raises its ugly head. If Jay offers arguments which say these other presuppositions don't work and only his theology explains the world, then he's doing natural theology, but in a kind of strange backward sort of way. But if he just asserts that his brand of theism just has to be our starting point because it's true, well, he's making an invalid argument we don't have to take seriously because it's assuming the very thing it's trying to prove. Finally, number 5, the objections to natural theology are not sound. I'll address more of Jay's objections in my rebuttal, but I do have some common ones here that I have noticed him bring up before. One is on the issue of natural contemplation, that I agree that natural theology is not like natural contemplation in Eastern Orthodoxy. That is the second stage of contemplating God after you've practiced the virtues in the active life. But Dionysios Sclerus from the University of Athens, he says, quote, while natural revelation is distinct from an argument from design in natural theology, natural revelation is nevertheless in the vicinity of natural theology, as it may include a short, informal inference from perceived features of the world to the existence of God. Even Father Staniloy in Orthodox dogmatic theology says, quote, the rationality of the cosmos attests to the fact that the cosmos is the product of a rational being. So it's there for rational people to perceive. We just might be having a semantic difference about who is able to perceive it and who isn't. Another issue that comes with natural theology that Jay's brought up is, well, he's brought up before the issue of empiricism, that you have to start with the peripatetic axiom. Everything is in the senses, and that can be disproven. The problem with that is that he's conflating Thomism with strict empiricism. Thomas doesn't do that. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says, quote, we should not attribute to medieval writers the kind of genetic or blank slate empiricism later found in the work of John Locke. Aquinas said our knowledge arises in De Veritate, quote, partly from within and partly from without, and that there is some truth in the idea that, quote, we already know that which we learn. So Aquinas' epistemology is not subject to the self-contradictions of strict empiricism because that's not what he's doing. Then that
Yeah, that's what I was explaining earlier about the agent intellect. Because basically, like, yeah, there's that twofold movement that you have. You have like, I don't know, I have this glass right here. My senses sense this. It shoots up a phantasm into my brain, and the agent intellect, which is a participation in the eternal divine knowledge, a certain natural participation in that divine light. It's going to abstract a concept from there, and therefore, I'm not able. I don't just know like a dog knows, which is purely sensible and individual things. This is why we're able to even have abstract universal knowledge in the first place. Yeah, I know. I still am mad about it. I'm still mad about it. It's St. Thomas to you. Okay, so is it true that all reasoning is circular? That argument sounds like just stupid pre-sup cope. No, LOL. No, it's not. It's for the reason that I mentioned earlier. That Metaphysics 3, 4. I can't remember whether I think it's book 4 of the Metaphysics and St. Thomas's commentary on it, which is basically that when it comes to first principles, they're only known either indirectly or by an imperfectly illative argument. Indirectly is going to be a reductio ad absurdum, and then imperfectly illative is going to show that the premise is really really explained or really identical to something else known. I mean that's basically going to be the idea. But no, I mean we're not going to say that there's going to be necessarily circular reasoning. They are going to say that there's going to be necessarily circular reasoning, is what it is.
That means that we can infer and apply concepts when we see isolated things, from a triangle to triangularity, a effect to causation, and then we can reason from that up. Yeah, and otherwise, I think I've covered all of that. I'll save some of the other rebuttals here when I come back. But otherwise, I think I've shown. Remember, Jay has the burden of proof. He's got to give us the good reasons to think we ought to get rid of natural theology, all natural theology. You could even disagree with Thomism and pick another natural theology. This debate is not about Catholic natural theology. It's about natural theology in general, and why we should give up something that 1 Peter 3:15 says can always help us be prepared to make a defense to anyone who calls you to account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence.
All right. Thank you, Trent.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that Trent made at the end is exactly what I was trying to make earlier. It's just like, okay, this is about a question of natural theology, like as a method, like as a methodological thing. Like technically speaking, you could say that, St. Thomas is whatever, that's wrong. Suarezism's wrong. Scotism's wrong. Every Catholic form is wrong. I mean, you could say that, okay, natural theology is something which methodologically exists, but for some reason, due to the darkness of original sin, like nobody's actually able to even access this. Like you could say stuff like that, and still this would be within the sphere of like the debate thesis,
Yeah, and so that completes the 15 minutes opening statements, and now we're going to our 7-minute rebuttals. Jay, are you ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, and once again, I felt kind of bad, stopping at the.
Yeah. So first principles are grasped. First principles are immediately grasped. Like that's true. But when it comes to like, okay, how do you justify first principles? It's going to be through only indirect or improperly illative arguments. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. So true. Commodus, Mr. Roman Emperor.
The end. And so when you have 10 seconds left, I'm going to expand the screen like this. All right. Whenever you start talking, I'll start the timer.
Right. Well, I'm glad that Trent affirmed Richard Swinburne, because it was exactly the referent in my the Garrity paper that is critiqued. And the first thing that comes up, of course, is that Trent says that theists and atheists alike agree that these things are true. That's the very thing that I'm calling into question. Not whether people think that they have things in common, but whether they can justify the things that they believe are in common. Trent goes on to say that he believes that this demonstration shows a personal God. There is no generic conception of personhood that is not theory-laden. I'm surprised that Trent thinks that there is, because it's not very hard to see in the history of the debates of the church into how they went into noting that the notion of person in Christian theism is actually a revealed category. It's not something.
No, I mean that's just completely incorrect. The notion of person in Christian theism is not a revealed category. That's completely incorrect. I mean when there's the famous formulations of person that occur, they're particularly using categories that they have received from the peripatetic schools. This is not at all something which is a revealed category. It's revealed that there are three persons in God due to the opposed relations. That's absolutely correct. I mean, that part is correct. But the fact that there's personhood. No, that's just simply incorrect.
Something that's real, revealed, or known via natural theology. And even in his theology, he thinks he could bypass the Trinitarian relationships to get to some sort of personhood that doesn't specifically reference or pick out the Trinity. The problem here is that in most of Trent's references, he didn't actually address the issue that I'm bringing up, which is about rigid and flat.
I mean, okay, so basically you can, and this is, I'm not sure why this isn't intuitive to more people, but pointing out the fact that somebody's knowledge of God is deficient, such as, they don't know the Trinity. Pointing out that somebody's knowledge of God is deficient is just saying that they're a creature. I mean, anybody's knowledge of God is deficient insofar as they don't have a complete comprehension of God. So you comprehend God in proportion to the amount in which you have access to, in proportion to the objects in which are proposed to you, in proportion of the strengthening, the subjective strengthening of whether you only have the light of reason, or maybe you've been illuminated with the light of faith, or maybe even the light of mystical experience. So these are going to be limiting factors to how much about God you can know. So it really is, it simply doesn't follow that these are going to be different gods because there's disagreements about the particular nature of God.
Acid designators. Trent just assumes that all the references in these various quotes that he quote mined actually prove his position, when the very thing that I'm asking is about reference themselves. Natural theology is premised on the presupposition that the word God is itself, or the word monotheism is itself, a rigid designator. It's not. It is not a pronoun. It does not pick out a specific reference. Within Scripture itself, we have many examples of the word God being used in this flaccid way. For example, God can pick out demons. God can pick out the persons or the essence or the attributes of the one true God. God can pick out human beings who are gods to Pharaoh, for example, in the case of Moses. I have said you are all gods. So the word God is just a bait and switch in the premise of all of the natural theistic and especially the monotheistic argumentation. Now, Trent is apparently unaware of the fact that.
Yeah, but I mean, we're all referring to particularly that which is the creator and end of all things. So I mean, it just doesn't follow that because the term is used in a number of different senses that there isn't this common referent that exists.
The Cappadocians, and nobody before the time of the 1600s, namely, at least in English, the character of Henry More in the 1600s, as Dr. Branson has shown throughout his work, used the word monotheism. He just presupposed that when the Cappadocians use the word mono or arche, that they're talking about monotheism. Now, I'm not disagreeing with the meaning of a single God, but in the theology of the Cappadocians, the reference of the one God or the monarche is the person of the Father.
Not necessarily. And I mean, I had a stream with Dr. Branson where I had, and I mean, you can check the comment where Dr. Sijuwade and I had a little bit of back and forth, but I mean, they concede that that's not necessarily the case. That's not at all necessarily the case that God or the one God is simply in reference to the Father. I mean, it's used in reference to the entire Trinity. I mean, there are dozens of quotations at Second Nicene Council, for example, where God is used in reference to the entire Trinity. There are. I think I brought actually. He quoted a quotation from each one of the Cappadocians where it is used in the sense of the Father, which is fine. We're fine with that as Catholics. But also, I responded with quotes from each one of those fathers as well, using God in the other sense, which is God in reference to the single divine nature. So that's just simply, that's just simply not the case, that there is an exclusive reference in this way.
It is always picked out as the person of the Father. In fact, the Nicene Constitution.
Not always at all. That's just incorrect. And you can see Dr. Branson, Dr. Sijuwade concede that to Astro and I.
The Apologian Creed says, I believe in one God, the Father Almighty. So we have the preeminence of personhood. And in any Trinitarian theology, we pick out the person of the Father, and that's the only way in which the mode of person exists. There's no such thing as a generic mode of person. For Trent's arguments to work at all, for him to say that there's a generic conception of personhood, or that God has a generic personhood that permeates the universe that he knows apart from Father, Son, and Spirit, which is what his position necessitates, is literally impossible.
This just assumes there isn't an absolute subsistence. This assumes that there isn't an absolute subsistence, which is just incorrect. Because we can know that there is an absolute subsistence in God. We can't know that there's a relative subsistence in God, which is why we distinguish in this manner between the inability for natural knowledge of the Trinity, and then the natural knowledge of God, because the three persons of the Trinity act ad extra in accordance with their numerically singular divine nature, because nature is the principle by which something operates. So we can know that there is a sort of, if you want to put it in this way, there's a sort of concrete instantiation of the deity that isn't a universal, and that's sufficient, in order to designate, personhood in a broader sense, if that makes sense. Which basically just means possession of will and intellect. That's really all that we're saying. Basically, a principle which possesses will and intellect. Okay, Jay agrees it's petitio, receiving and adhering to correct presuppositions is a matter of predestination in the Van Til framework, as I understand it. Perhaps. That's perhaps true. Oh, 250 of you guys watching. Well, there's 250 of you guys watching, so remember to like. Remember to become a patron, become a member. I just did a big member stream on purgatory. Talked about why purgatory is really bad. I released an article this morning on my Patreon actually about purgatory. So you guys should look at those, okay? There's a lot of you guys watching, 250.
Is no such thing. And again, the fallacies that are listed in the Garrity paper show in multiple ways and in multiple examples how the word God is simply not a rigid designator. It's flaccid. So it doesn't tell you what it's picking out without the context of the rest of the beliefs. And I gave examples from contrasting it with Islam, or we could contrast it with something even absurd like a cult, right? There's plenty of cults that say, well, I believe in Jesus. You believe in Jesus. Does that mean the referent is the same because it's the same word? No, it's begging the...
I mean, we're not really assuming that. And I think I've talked about this like 5 times already, so I'll shut up.
Question. And Trent is acting like these are not real philosophical questions, that you can't demonstrate this in a formal, logical way, which the Garrity paper does, and which I gave multiple examples showing it. Now, again, as we move on, the Greek word of polytheia is usually contrasted, right, by the Cappadocians and the early church fathers to the monoarche. Monoarche is not the same thing as monotheia. Monotheia, which again, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It really depends on the context and the embedded meaning that it has in the theory in which it's embedded. And so this is how words and language work. And so Trent is acting like there's been no development or no questions that are relevant that have been asked since the ancient and medieval world. But the ancient medieval world didn't typically ask theory-laden, presuppositional, paradigm-level questions that Hume and Kant do ask. So it's fine if Trent doesn't...
I mean, is he conceding here that the church fathers were using natural theology? I mean, is he conceding that? That's what it sounded like to me, is they just didn't simply ask these questions. There's a certain development in doctrine that happens. Because I mean, it's really impossible to argue that by the 2nd century, Christian apologists weren't explicitly giving peripatetic arguments for the existence of God, at least since the 2nd century. So I'm very, very confused here.
Want to address the types of things that Hume and Kant bring up in regard to linguistics, and somebody like Vico and later linguistic philosophers bring up in regard to referent questions. But that's precisely the type of question that I'm asking. That's what the Garrity paper critiques in the fallacy that underlies the assumption of...
Before the resurrection, will we feel pain/passions? Before the resurrection, you mean while we're in purgatory? Yes, there'll be sense pain. That's what you're asking.
General theism. There is no general theism unless Trent can show how somehow a priori or somehow from the created order, he has a generic conception of personhood that at the same time matches up to the Muslim conception of personhood, but also somehow matches up to personhood in Christian Trinitarian theology. But guess what? It doesn't. If you ask a Muslim, any Muslim, go into the Muslim system about what the personhood of God is, it does not mean what the Cappadocians and St. Cyril and the church fathers who wrote tons of pages explicating what prosopon and hypostasis means. Doesn't mean that at all. Totally.
Okay, so they're disagreeing about certain... I mean, didn't he just critique this earlier? They're disagreeing about certain attributes when it comes to God. Yes, of course. I mean, I could think that J. Athanasius is brown rather than being white, and that wouldn't mean that I didn't know J. Athanasius. And that simply just doesn't follow.
Totally different. Totally different. The fact that there's overlap does not prove a common core religion any more than 2 card games that are played because they have cards and because they have rules in common, share therefore a common core card game. There's nothing in common between Crazy Eights and poker simply because there's cards and rules. This is the fallacy that his whole position rests on, is that there is...
No. I mean, they're both card games, though, aren't they? That's the purpose here. Or maybe, I mean, if let's say I played poker, for the first time and I drank too much and I didn't remember the rules too well. And the next morning I come home. Well, I don't come home the next morning, and I don't drink too much. But anyways, for the analogy, the next morning my wife asked me about how the poker game was last night, and I say, well, I won the poker game. And actually I lost $500,000. Do I still know what poker is? Yes. Yes, this is clear. I don't like the analytic philosophy mind games that they try to play. This stuff is common sense. This is common sense stuff that we understand, and that's really what, in a way, Thomism is really just kind of many fancy ways of thinking about common sense and the implications of common sense.
Is that thing? Now he went on to cite Augustine, Aquinas, Athanasius, Gregory Nazianzus, as if they teach the same thing, and they don't. That's a presupposition, which multiple writers, Dr. Bradshaw, the Rodagowitz thesis shows that they do not, in fact, teach the same thing. He mentioned that God's eternal power is seen, quoting the text that I quoted. God's eternal power, I don't even think, in your view, is created. Do you think that creatures can see the eternal power in this life? I don't think he thinks that.
No, his eternal power and deity, not seen, they become known through what is seen. That's what Romans 1 says. They become known through what is seen. What is seen, the created effects. What becomes known from that? The eternal power and deity. And really, this is kind of what's so crazy about how Aaron interpreted this, is therefore you're saying that we know the second person of the Trinity from created things, and then we're rejecting the second person of the Trinity from what we know? How is that supposed to work?
Because he believes in, the beatific vision. You don't have a direct perception of God in this life, especially not in the analogia entis doctrine of Aquinas. Now, he tried to cite Maximus as if Maximus's text about natural law or natural contemplation proved natural theology in his system.
Okay, again, are you going to define what natural theology actually is and in what sense you accept it? I really haven't seen that yet. I mean, that's the difficulties. We really haven't seen what exactly you mean, how exactly you're distinguishing them. I think that's problematic. I think that's definitely problematic. This is very much, Jay attacking, well, I mean, I guess since the question is, should Christians accept natural theology? It's, if you're going to attack natural theology in general, well, you're going to need to say, okay, I accept it in a qualified way. This is the way in which I reject it. It's not enough to say, well, I think Thomism is wrong with this, and this, and this. I mean, that's not a rejection of natural theology. You've already said that you accept in a qualified sense what natural theology is. What is that qualified acceptance? What is that qualified acceptance? And how, with this qualified acceptance, do you get away from those problems that you've mentioned about generic theism or about, certain disagreements we may have about the nature of God? In what sense is that natural theology then? And these are very important questions that just aren't being asked, or aren't being answered.
But in fact, Maximus, according to Szyszynski, a Roman Catholic, now Orthodox scholar, other filioque.
Yeah, but anyways, it doesn't really matter what Szyszynski or what any other of these individuals say about these things. I want to see where they say it in their works. I mean, I could quote people all day. I mean, I can find obscure Roman Catholic French scholars from the early 20th century who are writing about this stuff, and I could say, well, they said this. This form of debate is just not convincing to me. And it really doesn't matter to me, what X scholar says about this, unless we have, and in the same way, Trent actually has more grounds of quoting somebody like St. Thomas than Jay has of quoting Szyszynski, because at least St. Thomas is going to genuinely be regarded as a theological authority, in a very remote way. But there are Eastern Orthodox saints who will say St. Thomas was great on these issues. He's amazing on these issues. It at least gives him some street cred. But with Szyszynski, I don't really care what Szyszynski says. And I don't think anybody should care what Szyszynski says unless it's backed up by intrinsic argumentation. He has no extrinsic authority for me. It's really only the quality of what he is presenting and the way in which he's proving it, which needs to be presented. So I don't really care what these secondary sources say. I guess that's more of a, I'm not blaming Jay for this at all. That's just the way that a lot of these debates go. And I really don't like that is the way in which we think it's okay to debate on these matters.
In the Middle Ages says, to utilize the language of later theology, Maximus's program there can be no analogia entis without the analogia fide. So if I were to give you a chart to show how this works in Maximus's system, it's actually directed this way. We perceive creatures which direct us to the principles, which direct us to the logi, which direct us to the logos. The logos is a...
Yeah, I mean, and this is true. This is true, and we do this. We do this because we believe that Christ is actually, and this might be a mind blow. You can read De Veritate about this. I think it's De Veritate, either Q4 or Q6 article, maybe like 10, somewhere around there. You'll see it. It's the word, and then it says the word in its relation to creatures. I mean, we think that Christ not only is the full and proper expression of the deity of the Father, but also of the Father's knowledge of all possible and per accidents actual things. So we think Christ in a way is the expression of all creation. We absolutely agree with that. And we say that the Christian intellect, illuminated by faith and knowing revelation, can, by the contemplation of things, be able to, by the analogy of things created, know certain things about the Son. I mean, through certain creative perfections. We absolutely agree with this. So there's no problem with this in principle. But the issue here is to say that, there's no natural knowledge of God because we're able to have this sort of knowledge from creatures to God. It seems like a completely different knowledge that's being spoken of. And it's saying, well, this must be true, therefore that other knowledge must be false, which is that just doesn't follow.
A rigid designator. It means the second person of the Godhead. It does not mean something like the logos of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. And so that logos is another good example of the fact that the word omniscience or eternal or one God is used is irrelevant to actually demonstrating what the referent is. Is that my time? Or
Yeah, that's your time,
Okay.
Jay. But thank you.
Die.
All right. Trent, are you ready to go?
I am.
All right, 7-minute rebuttal starting whenever Trent begins speaking.
All right, so remember, Jay has the burden to show us that we cannot use reason to show basic facts about God. I'm not saying that reason can prove everything.
Okay, I got give me 1 second. I gotta get some water.
If you really enjoy this channel, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/militant Thomist. At the first level, you get access to the private Discord. At the second level, you get access to weekly bonus videos. At the third level, you get access to free translations, articles, and notes on the Summa of St. Thomas. On the fourth level, you get access to course videos and DM questions. And beyond this, there are many other benefits, so please make sure to check out patreon.com/militant Thomist. Do you want to have access to more videos and custom interaction whilst also helping out the channel? If so, please consider becoming a YouTube member. At the first level, for only $3 a month, get access to custom emojis to use in live streams and in the comment section. At the second level, for only $5 a month, get access to a weekly bonus stream. At the third level, for only $10 a month, get access to priority replies on all your comments. Click the join button below or the link in the description to find out more.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, now let's get back to it. Yes, thank you, Unius Initiative. Thank you very much. Yeah, Adner. Yeah, you're funny. You're funny. Yeah, we love the sappy emote. Yeah, exactly. If you want the sappy emote, if you want all of those emotes, you got to become a member. I mean, if you're not a member, you don't get the extra stream every week. You don't get all the cool emojis. You don't get all that stuff. So that's why you just have to be a member. I mean, it's something that you have to do. You got to click join below. You know what I'll do? I think I can give out free memberships. I will give out 5 free memberships. Let me see. I think I get like 10 every single month. Just because you guys are so amazing. I love you guys so much. You guys are my favorite. Oh, Jay's streaming right now. I love you guys so much. Should I call in? I'm just joking. I'm not going to call in. I will hand out 5 free memberships to you guys. Okay. So let me start a new poll too. Did Jay win? Jay always wins. Jay always wins. Jay won. Jay won. Okay, we all know this. Call in. I should call in. Okay. How do I send my free stuff? Membership gifting. Okay, I have 5 to give. So I will give 5 now, okay? Boom. There you guys go. I hope you appreciate it. You gotta give it along. You gotta give it along. You gotta keep giving. Gotta keep giving. Gotta keep giving. Yeah, free promo if I talk. Gotta gift it. Gotta gift it, guys. Gotta keep the gift going. It's like when you're through the drive-through, and you pay for the next person's stuff. That's what you guys gotta do. You guys just gotta keep it going. Just gotta keep it going.
About God. I don't really know any theists that believe that. I know some theists that go pretty far and think you can use reason to prove the Trinity or prove almost everything in theology. I'm not prepared to affirm that. Most aren't. But so I'm not saying reason can prove everything about God, but man, through natural human reason, can come to affirm shared propositions. So let me try to get through some of these arguments that Jay brought up. Essentially, his primary argument seems to be natural theology rests on the idea that there is a generic theism that can be defended because we all disagree about God's properties, his attributes, his intentions. There is no such.
No. One of you guys got to do it. One of you guys got to do it. One of you guys got to call in and say Wagner's going hard right now. Wagner's going hard. Wagner says he wants to debate you right now. Oh man, Wagner's gonna. I gotta check my DMs on Twitter. I don't know, Jay. I love that guy. So wouldn't be surprised if he DM me. He's like, I see your review of my debate, Wagner. You want to come debate? That would be beautiful.
Thing is this generic theism. Therefore, there can't be natural theology.
Yo,
but that falls apart when you start to think about it.
Continue
to say that God is this rigid designator and it always has to refer to the Trinity, that's false. Did Abraham believe in God? Did Moses believe in God? Yeah. Did they believe in the Trinity during their earthly lifetime? Maybe they had an implicit knowledge of it. I don't know, but they certainly did not have the theological knowledge of the Trinity that Jay has or I have.
Yeah, and I mean Trent was critiqued on this point, and I think in a way rightly so, but in a way not so. I think Trent is clear here, because he says the type of knowledge of the Trinity that you and I have, which is correct. I mean, obviously, I believe, along with St. Thomas, that the patriarchs, the greater ones in the Old Covenant, had explicit knowledge of the Trinity. But what does this explicit knowledge look like for them? I mean, were they like, do you think Abraham was like thinking about the filioque? Do you think that Abraham was like thinking about the way in which relation functions? Like, do you think he was thinking about these particular aspects of Trinitarian theology? No. I mean, there are plenty of lay Orthodox, lay Catholic, well, lay Orthodox, I guess, for Jay's case, lay Orthodox that are extremely holy people, and he would say would be going into heaven, who have a different level of knowledge when it comes to the Trinity. And I think this actually responds to his critique, it responds to the critique pretty well, because he's going to cut off the ability for natural theology because of these missing premises or missing propositions, and say, therefore, this is a designator of something else besides the creator of all things.
So they did not believe in the Trinity like we do, yet we could say they believed in God. I think the problem here is that we have to understand that terms can differ in sense and referent. Okay, so when I say that Kal-El and Clark Kent are, well, that's the same person. When I say the morning star is the evening star, Hesperus is Phosphorus, I'm talking about the same planet, Venus. We just give it two different names based on how it appears in the sky. And we can do something similar with God, understanding that people can make arguments and affirm truths about God, and the God they're talking about the same referent, but it differs in sense. I'll give you a parallel argument.
No. Okay. Well, one, you're wrong about this, and two, don't call him Aquinas. It's St. Thomas. Put some respect on his name. And three, of course, St. Thomas, you're showing your ignorance right now of the teaching of the common doctrine of the Catholic Church, and you should be ashamed to so rashly impute falsehood to such a great doctor who is much more brilliant than you are or you could ever wish to be, and also much more brilliant than I am or I could ever wish to be. And St. Thomas does actually speak about progressive revelation in Scripture in his Sentences commentary and in his Summa, and also in De Veritate as well. And those are the only three places I remember, but there's probably other places. So don't impute rashly falsehood to such a great doctor. I mean, and put some respect on his name. It's St. Thomas. Stop calling him Aquinas. That's just ridiculous. And yeah, stop. Just stop. Just look at yourself in the mirror and stop. Okay. New member, thank you. Call in on Jay's stream. I'm reviewing the debate. I'm reviewing the debate. I don't know. Do I want to call in? I don't know. That might be actually a good thing. I might, if I called in and then I asked him like, okay, well, you said in this debate that there's a sense in which you reject it, sense in which you deny it. Like, what is exactly the sense of that? I don't know. I'll think about that. I will think about that. Okay. Anyways, let's continue. He just went offline. Oy vey. Oy vey. It's so over. So over. Yeah, like what if he showed up? I hope he shows up for $200 for I would obviously do it for $200. But he's offline now, so Wagner just reacted like an autistic kid when you say that Superman would lose to Cuckoo. Yeah, cry about it. Bro ran away. I'm sure, dude. What if I get that DM? I see that DM notification and it says Jay Dyer up top. Oh man. Okay, let's continue it. Unless I missed something, come debate me, bro. What if he did show up in chat? That would be beautiful.
They believe water exists, and Aristotle believed water exists. But I believe also that water is H2O. Aristotle didn't do that. Aristotle and I have very dramatically different views about what water is, but we can still both affirm that water exists. Water is wet. Water quenches thirst.
True.
Even though we don't agree on all the propositions related to water and its existence, we agree on the most important.
I actually deny that it's
in the
H2O,
paper
guys.
that Dyer is referring to. I think it's from some atheist professor in the University of Budapest. I remember reading it a while ago. He misses this when saying that, yeah, just because something shares something in common doesn't mean it's the core, but it's an essential property. You take it away, it loses its essence and its identity. So even though natural theologians disagree amongst each other, they can still affirm the same propositions about that reference. They can affirm there is one God. There is that polytheism is false, that God created the world, that God is immaterial, that God is beyond time, that God is all powerful, worthy of worship. And we do see this in natural theology. Among the classical theologians, Avicenna, Aristotle, Aquinas, Anselm, for 2,000 years history, they affirm even more divine immutability, simplicity, other things like that. Now, you might reject some of that natural theology, like divine simplicity. That's okay. We're not debating particular natural theologies. We're debating the concept itself. So I think Jay's main concern here is, okay, you can use this. You're saying, he said earlier, well, you've got a bunch of metaphysical baggage in trying to affirm Catholic theology, and Orthodoxy doesn't have metaphysical baggage, uncreated energies, energy essence distinction. I'm not saying those things are false. I'm just saying that Jay will have to do the same kinds of natural theology explanations that I would for the attributes that I believe in. He just calls it by another name, by this presuppositionalism. No, I'm not. The fact that all monotheists believe in one God and we can say that they're worshiping the same God does not commit the quantifier shift fallacy. Because I could say every astronomer believes there is one star in our solar system. And it follows from that basic truth, every astronomer studies the same star in our solar system because they're all committed to the view our solar system has only one star. We can say the same for the fathers of the church, for even other world religions. If someone's committed there is one ultimate infinite creator, then they're giving worship to this being, but they disagree about it. They disagree about the propositions that are involved. And as I said before, Jay's presuppositionalism, we'll just presuppose the God of Orthodox Christian theism.
I'm banning you.
That doesn't get us out of the lurch because you could easily presuppose any of these other competitors. He hasn't given us an independent reason to see otherwise.
Mods, nuke this man. Nuke this man, mods. Mods, why do you nuke him? Mods, commit jihad against this man.
Instead, what he's given us is something that practices circular reasoning. To say, well, we have to, that's because he hasn't defended as much in this debate, but that'd be my question to him. If we don't use natural theology, how would we demonstrate to people that God exists? And the view he's endorsed previously is just, well, we know that the foundational truth that Jay says we can't believe in foundational truths, but he hasn't given an argument, by the way, to say that we can't believe in foundational truths like foundational, I mean self-evident, by the way, that we don't need other reasons to believe in these truths. Otherwise, you'd have an infinite regress. He has not given us a reason to think there aren't self-evident truths that are immediately available to us from which we can reason about reality and then to reality's origin. Self-evident truths like, I exist. I experience mental change. I am having perceptions. Perceptions may not be accurate, but I'm having perceptions of some kind. and then building from these self-evident truths to say, well, I'm limited, I'm contingent, I'm changing, that there has to be some kind of explanation given other things that we perceive. Jay said that, Hume showed that we can't have these basic.
Okay, are Thomas foundationalists? By what you intend to signify, I think yes. But again, I must qualify that I don't know what you intend to signify by that.
Truths about causality. Hume's just wrong about that, frankly. We can get into that more into my next rebuttal. But yeah, ultimately, if the arguments Jay is making against natural theology would also apply to presuppositionalism. The only way he can get out of it is to say, well, no, presuppositionalism just is true. It just is our starting founding point. And we know that because it's the true revelation, which of course is circular reasoning. It's like saying the Bible, it's like saying the Bible is the word of God. The Bible says God exists, therefore God exists. Circular arguments are invalid. Instead, natural theology provides us the valid way to show that God does exist.
All right, thank you, Trent. We're now getting into our 4-minute rebuttal section. So this is now Jay's 4-minute rebuttal. Jay, whenever you're ready, just go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad that Trent referenced something as easily philosophically just too devastating to his positions, like the Cartesian position that I can have a self-evident knowledge of my own existence. I mean, this has been savagely refuted by both Kant and Bertrand Russell in numerous ways to demonstrate that there is no self-evident positions, and the epistemic bootstrapping thing that Trent's system is committed to is impossible for him to do. In other words, he affirmed a position which is known there as a kind of strong foundationalism. The problem with strong foundationalism is that for something like Descartes' position to make the statement to be meaningful that I exist assumes a host of things that he's not justified. And the whole point with his position is that you shouldn't affirm things that you can't justify in terms of starting points. So Trent is misunderstanding that I'm critiquing the starting points of his position. I'm not saying that I don't have to do legwork and that orthodoxy doesn't have metaphysics. It's an issue of accounting for the metaphysics. It's not an issue of do I believe in metaphysics?
Oh crap! What did I miss? I was too busy not blinking. Wow. Dude, Kayak, you Kayak, can you debate Jay Dyer for me, please? Kayak? Can you debate, please? No, I don't think she's gonna. No. How did you not blink for so long? I don't know. I'm just built different, I guess.
Do we share metaphysical notions in common, like teleology or causation? It's a question of justifying, giving an account for, and grounding those principles, JTB, and of course the fourth position, if we look at the Gettier problem. Now, he continues to say that reason can say some things about God. And again, this response just presupposes that God is a rigid designator. He attributed to me the position that God must be a rigid designator. If it's going to pick out something that's common to the religions, then yes. I mean, is Trent arguing for a generic God that isn't picked out somehow? No, of course. And the fact that he goes into attributes like person or personal shows that this, again, doesn't work because there's no generic theory neutral concept of person apart from, in the Christian paradigm, the Trinity. Trent doesn't have a basic understanding of what the presuppositional argument is. It's not a circular argument that just says it's true because therefore it's true and I cite it and therefore it's true. It's nothing like that. It's a comparison of paradigms because it's a meta-logical question. So Trent keeps collapsing every question into logical questions when the very question I'm raising to him is meta-logical. I'm asking prior questions to metaphysics about the epistemology that's behind doing the metaphysics. And that's what the modern philosophers ask. I'm not saying that David Hume is right in his skepticism. I'm merely asking his questions. That doesn't mean that I'm committed to Humeanism or Kantianism. I'm asking the questions that they ask to foundationalist systems, especially strong foundational systems, which Trent just affirmed in the I exist. Well, are you not aware that I exist presupposes that language has meaning? It presupposes that there's an I or a self. It presupposes that there's time determination. Existing is occurring. Those are heavy metaphysical claims and baggage that are not demonstrable on Descartes' foundational cogito. They're assumed. And the business of philosophy is to question assumptions. And that's precisely what I've been doing in this debate. And Trent just says, well, they're just self-evident things. That doesn't get you out of the circularity problem that you say you're here to avoid. Foundationalism is circular. And that's why we say that there's two different orders of things in this question of paradigms, right? There's the day-to-day or mundane type of argumentation that I would do about logic or this or that proposition or fact. But metalogical questions cannot be resolved in that same way. Look at something like Gödel's incompleteness theorems, which show that you can't solve those types of problems in a mono-singular way because they reference outside the set. So he's literally trying to repeat something like Bertrand Russell would say to Gödel. And I'm just simply saying that set theory shows you, as an example, as an analogy, that you can't just refer to the set itself to justify the set. It extends outside of itself. And the fact that you appeal to foundationalism shows that you're just self-referencing and doing the very thing that your position says is impossible.
All right. Thank you, Jay. Right on time. All right. Trent, your 4-minute rebuttal is.
Jay kind of did cook there. You guys are right. That was a cook. That was a cook moment. That was a cook moment.
Starts whenever you start talking.
All right, well, I showed why Jay's arguments against natural theology don't work. What about the arguments that I gave in defense?
So you guys, was it okay? Okay, I will ask. Although obviously Kayak will have the determining vote here. Let me get a poll up. Was that Yap or did Jay Yap or did Jay cook? Okay, I think he cooked there. Not gonna lie, but I'm not as familiar with the problems that he's. Whoa, it's 71% of you guys say that Jay didn't win. Okay, that's wrong. Okay, let me start the poll. Did Jay ... cook? Yap. Okay, let's get it. Let's get it. You guys think he cooked? You guys think he cooked? Oh! Cook is winning by a slight margin. Oh no, Yap is. Oh no, Cook is back up. Oh man. Oh 50-50. Okay, this is crazy. Wow. Yeah. Okay, let me continue. I want to see what Trent's answer is to it because I'm just not familiar with some of the different issues in analytic philosophy that he was talking about, so I can't really give any constructive comments on it.
Of natural theology. What has he said about them? I gave 5 arguments. We have freedom in Christ, so natural theology is the default. We're free to do it unless we have an overwhelming reason to think that we.
The Canadian Catholic channel. Who knows the lore? Anybody know the lore behind the Canadian Catholic? Okay. I hope that's a different guy.
We shouldn't. Jay hasn't really he hasn't attacked that reasoning, and he hasn't given us any overwhelming reason. I mean, I think he's trying to say we shouldn't do natural theology because it doesn't work, and he's come nowhere close to establishing that principle. Number 2 is the church infallibly defends natural theology. I know Jay isn't Catholic, but I'm just saying it because it's true, and it hasn't come up, and that hasn't been challenged at all. As to my citation of Scripture and the Fathers, Jay just kind of said, well, he's quote my.
Yeah, when it came to the reason, he kind of sidestepped it and went to somewhere else. Yeah, that's true. That's true. He did kind of sidestep the philosophy stuff and went to the side. Okay, no, share the lore. Yeah, there was this guy named Canadian Catholic. I can't remember his real name, but he basically was like a very vile person who was like in the online apologetic sphere. And he said some like very nasty, disgusting things. And he was like hypersexualized, and he SA'd a certain woman in a psychiatric ward when he was in there for depression or some dumb thing like that. And yeah, and eventually, we drove him out of the scene. But that guy's name was Canadian Catholic. So the Canadian Catholic channel is it brings me back. He was like universally hated by literally everyone. I've co-opted the name and I'm reclaiming it for a channel dedicated to Catholicism in Canada. So you know of the original Canadian Catholic. Dude, this sounds like exactly something that Canadian Catholic would say. By the way, this sounds like exactly what Canadian Catholic would say. Okay. He would say stuff like that. So I really hope that you are the original guy was a terrible guy. Okay, I'm really hoping that you are different than the original guy. Oh yeah, I forgot that I had a super chat up there. I hate all women, no e-girls, not even one. So true, King. Answer imprecatory psalm question. So can you pray imprecatory psalms against your ex-girlfriend? I mean, I can't see why not.
Finding them
but yeah, Trent seems not to have an answer to the specific problems he brought up, which I don't. Oh, it's John Fisher. Yo, John Fisher 2.0. That is you. Yeah, that is you. That picture is you. Okay. Yeah, I didn't see you from afar. You're tiny on my screen, but yes, that definitely is John Fisher. Okay. Yeah, that is John Fisher. I don't know why you named yourself the same thing as Canadian Catholic. It's been a minute, Mr. John Fisher. It absolutely has been a minute. But yeah, Trent didn't really answer it. And he's going to pivot to the scripture and tradition thing, which is good. I mean, that's strong points that we have on scripture and tradition, for sure. And I think those are proper places to go.
And he hasn't refuted in any way the arguments I brought up showing that natural theology using reason to show God exists, and go back and re-listen to what I said from the fathers, especially the fathers from the East, they're not talking about natural contemplation. They're talking about ways of showing non-believers. Gregory of Nyssa is talking about this. And in the section from Gregory of Nyssa's Great Catechism, I shared an excerpt where he talks about showing atheists God exists and showing polytheists that there is only one God. So you can read it for yourself. I'll upload a document with my citations after this debate if you want to read that.
Jay's right. Problems presented by Kantian epistemology is real, but he acts like we have no answers. Bonaventure's divine illumination thwarts the problem, in my opinion. But yeah, when it comes to I'm gonna cook here. But when it comes to Bonaventure's divine illumination, it's exactly what I mentioned earlier about St. Thomas's view of the agent intellect. It's literally the same idea. Okay, it's the same idea. And actually, I think that Kayak, you'd probably be interested in talking with Kayak. Because Kayak, at least from what I've spoken to him about these things and about Kant's epistemology, it seems like you're pushing in a similar direction to where at least I've started to think about these problems with. So I don't know. Okay, I now feel nothing more than anger against women. Okay, Kayak, but could you please get to the interesting stuff that we're talking about right now and get off the woman question? See, this is why just be an incel. Like, that's based. Being an incel is based. Just stay away from women. I mean, talk about the interesting stuff like what we're talking about right now, dude.
My fourth argument was that presuppositionalism doesn't work. And we've started to talk about that a little bit. So
yeah, exactly. The new stuff. I've literally mentioned forever that the new stuff is just like a weird way in which they're articulating the agent intellect. I think it is.
Here's the thing with justifying knowledge. This is called Agrippa's trilemma. There's only 3 ways to justify proposition X is true. You either have an infinite number of other propositions that support it, an infinite regress. If that's the case, you have no knowledge whatsoever. Knowledge disappears under infinite regress. You could have a circular argument, but circular arguments are invalid. We agree that it's invalid.
I know, bro.
Jay himself even said that in logic, circular arguments are invalid, but he claims, yes, but if it's metalogic, a metalogical question, then we can use circular reasoning. But here's the problem. Circular reasoning doesn't stop the invalidity. The fallaciousness of circular reasoning doesn't stop just because the circle gets bigger. If Jay says, well, yeah, circular reasoning doesn't work in any of this stuff, except for me proving the whole system that it comes from the God of Orthodox Christian faith, then he's now just special pleading. He's saying, yes, circular reasoning is bad, except for the one thing that I need it for here. And once again, the whole rigid designator thing, I would ask these questions. Was Muhammad correct when he said there is one God? No, he didn't fully understand God. But was Moses correct when he said there is one God? Or Abraham? They didn't fully understand the Trinity or God either, yet they understood these propositions. We can look at a series of propositions and see their truth value in the evidence that
Okay, when it comes to the Trinity thing, CF what I said earlier.
That is behind them. So Jay also claimed that, foundationalism, self-evident truths, that they're actually not true or that they're circular.
Shut up, woman. I'm banning you from my chat right now. Shut up. Mods, nuke her. Mods, get rid of her. Get rid of this woman right now. Get rid of her right now. Mods, ban her. Ban her right now. I want her banned by the time I'm back, okay? Somebody ban her.
But he gave us no evidence to believe that or why we should believe that. And I can use elimination. We know you can't have an infinite regress. We know circular reasoning is invalid no matter how big the circle gets. So we have to start with things that are self-evident. And ultimately, Jay's position, his alternative, we presuppose.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think Trent is really being super convincing here. Because while these things are self-evident, insofar as we immediately apprehend these things, like there is indirect ways of justifying it that the tradition has talked about, which I mentioned earlier. So I mean, you could bring these things up, which Aristotle brings up in the Metaphysics, Book 4, and then St. Thomas comments on. Like you could bring these things up. I don't know why these aren't brought up though. I don't think I've ever heard anybody in these like epistemology debates actually bring these things up. That's like the traditional way of dealing with this.
Positionalism. You'll see the shocking circularity. Ask him, why presuppose the God of Eastern Orthodox Christian faith? Why is that our presupposition instead of all the other presuppositions?
Yeah, but I also think this is completely fair. Is exactly what Trent is saying here. It's just completely arbitrary that he happens to presuppose his own view is correct. You know, it's just completely arbitrary. It's like not a solution to the problem. You know, like the problem is posed and Jay is giving a certain solution that's not adequately justified. And then we're giving a certain solution that he says is not being adequately justified, but he still hasn't adequately justified his own view anyways.
As I gave. The answer Jay will have to give is because it's true. And that, my friends, is circular reasoning. Instead, we should not use fallacious reasoning in our theology for God. We should use valid reasoning. And that's why Christians should not reject natural theology.
All right. Thank you, Trent Horn. Now at this point, then, we're going to get...
Okay. Top 3 favorite imprecatory psalms. I would actually have to think about that. I don't have all the imprecatory psalms memorized off the top of my head. Sorry, man. Wagner's last name is Agner. He's so W, man. Okay, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Get into our 8-minute cross-examination periods.
Ooh, the cross-examination's when this is going to get spicy, okay? I'm excited to see this. I'm excited to watch it.
Jay is going to lead the first 8-minute session, and then Trent will lead the next 8 minutes. And so what I'll do is when you have 10 seconds left, I'm going to disappear from the chat or disappear from the stream. When you have 10 seconds left, I'll reappear. So I'll just use kind of visual cues instead. So yeah, Jay, whenever you start talking, I'll start the timer.
Again, the question here is about presuppositions for sure. And I've listed many things and many problems for the foundationalist approach that you're advocating.
Mhm.
You replied with something to the effect that, well, there's a trilemma that we could refer to, and there's really not many other options here. Well, the fact that you don't think there's many other options actually doesn't count as a justification for the starting point. In other words, you started with properly basic beliefs. And all I have to ask you is that, do you think that the notion of properly basic beliefs themselves is self-evident?
Do you mean the idea, properly basic belief?
Well, if I said only beliefs that are self-evident or incorrigible or evident to the senses are properly basic, the problem is that you're in an infinite circular regress because the proposition itself, in terms of you knowing it, is not part of your sense data, nor can you show that it's properly basic without assuming it.
Well, I would agree that the idea of a properly basic belief may itself not be properly basic, but one could just have
No,
self.
that's not what I asked.
Okay, what did you
The
ask?
proposition itself about properly basic belief, is it properly basic?
The proposition there are properly basic beliefs.
The proposition only beliefs that are self-evident or incorrigible or evident to the senses are properly basic.
Well, I would say that it's true. You're saying, how do I know what properly basic
No,
beliefs
I didn't
are?
ask if it's true. I'm asking, is that notion itself properly basic?
So you're saying that if it is properly basic, it creates some kind of circularity. If I say that,
Yes.
okay. Well, as I said before, I don't.
I mean, you could just argue that the subject and the predicate are really identical. That's a way of that's the whole point of like an expository, improperly illative argument right there. That's actually this is a great example of one. I mean, he could just argue that they're actually really identical.
Know if
Whereas with like a properly illative argument, you are taking two propositions and drawing forth a third that is virtually contained within those two premises. And then with an indirect argument, you're making a reductio ad absurdum. Okay, we can't do a direct argument. We can do an indirect argument, and we also can do an improperly illative argument, which is a type of direct, but it's not like a full type of direct. I don't know, guys. I don't know, bros. Am I cooking here? Am I just yapping? Am I just yapping over this? Do you guys just want to watch this and have me not yap?
description of an idea might be properly basic, but the experience itself is. And then we have terms to describe what the experience is.
It doesn't matter how you redefine it, because the point is that there's no self-evident or incorrigible propositions like that found in sense data.
Mhm.
So what's the justification for that?
The justification is that there are some propositions that we encounter, and upon entertaining the proposition, the justification is also immediately apparent. And
Yeah,
so
that's
so
circularity. That's the problem of properly basic beliefs.
no, it's not.
You just said it's immediately apparent. That's circularity.
No, because
Begging the question.
okay, it's not that, because if I say, for example, I am having an experience right now, I am just reporting something that is happening to me.
That's not all you're doing. No, I gave you multiple examples, which you said I didn't do in critiquing the cogito,
Like what?
of all of the metaphysical things that are assumed in the sentence.
Okay, but even if I don't understand all the concepts that are involved, we can also.
It doesn't matter. This is about justifying the beliefs.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying to me, natural theology is false because there are no self-evident truths.
I'm critiquing your position of a strong foundationalism.
Okay, but even if someone picked a weaker form of foundationalism, I
Yeah,
think
but
a
that's
lot
not
of
what you picked. So
well,
you
okay,
can
what
think
I would
position
say.
that's not the position you defended 5 minutes ago.
Okay, but even the position that I have, I would just say a lot of people, even people who are non-believers or atheists, would agree there are just basic facts about existence that we have agreement on.
Okay, so
And
you're
from there we can build
So you're going to
arguments.
appeal to the mass. That's actually a fallacy. It's not a justification.
No, I'm
Using a circular argument though is a fallacy, not a justification. That's all I'm saying, Jay. All I'm saying, Jay. Let's not throw this around too much.
not saying that. I'm saying that it's
Well, I
self-
asked for justification. So what's the justification?
the problem is, Jay, I gave you a justification, but your system just won't allow it because
Those aren't
everything is
justifications. Those are fallacies.
no. I told you that some propositions that we encounter,
That's
their
begging the
truth is
question.
immediate, and we do not have to infer them.
I'm asking for the justification. You're just saying that it's immediate.
Okay, so Kayak, how exactly would you articulate? Like, what label would you put to our view on this matter? Because people ask, like, "Oh, do you believe in foundationalism?" I would be like, "Okay, well, do you mean this? And if you mean this, then yeah, I believe what you're calling foundationalism right now. Like, what would you label it as? I guess. Wagger, do you play an instrument? No, I don't. But please, Kayak.
Immediate. But
The
that
ju-
rests
fine,
on
I would say
that rests on the assumption that the external world is properly caused to impress upon your senses.
Fine, I would say the justification that the self-evident truths in my epistemology are true would be the same as whatever justification leads you to believe that the God of Christian Orthodoxy
I'm not
is
a
the ultimate
foundationalist,
foundation.
so I'm not subject to that problem. I don't make the strong foundationalist claim that you just did, so I don't have that problem. I admit circularity at this level.
Okay, but only at that level.
Okay, this is kind of yappy. This reminded me when you said I have criticisms of Lofton, but he took a W when he said he'd debate Jay in the written form. I've never seen the Ybarra Jay debate. Do you guys want to watch a portion of that? Do you guys want that, or do you guys want me to continue on with this? Okay, one's for continue on with this, 2 for Ybarra. Okay. Sure. I said 1s and 2s. 2. Okay, 1. Okay, now I see all the numbers. Okay, 2. Yes, watch 2. You said 1, 2, 2, 1. Bepsy will be here anyways. 2, 1. Sanctus, you're staying anyways. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, it's basically almost all 2s. Okay, almost all 2s. I haven't actually been able to find any actual medieval writings that are unequivocally writings on epistemology in the modern sense of the term. So you don't think like the commentaries on the Metaphysics Book 4, that's basically defensive metaphysics, you don't think you wouldn't describe that as epistemology in your sense? Okay, well I'm moving over to the other one. If you guys want to leave, cry about it, don't leave, please. Or yeah, I'm going to Purgatory debate stream. Open mic and Q&A. What do you mean open mic? Yo, is he he's having a patristic pillars is up right now. A purgatory open debate. Should I join and then start asking them about the temporal debt? Okay. Ybarra beat Jay. Okay, Ybarra, Jay Dyer. Okay. Open debate, Catholic versus Orthodox. Yo, this is classic. This is such W. Here we go. Are you doing stand-up comedy anytime soon? Oh my god, dude, I would never be able to do stand-up comedy. I would be horrible. Look at Lofton. Look at Loft Dog right now. Yo, it says Christopher Lofton there. Confirmed. We got him, boys. We got him. We love patristic pillars. Okay. We love patristic pillars. Let me see. I wonder if I could actually call in right now. Okay, this says, yo, the StreamYard link is there. Let me see how many people are in the StreamYard. Okay, let me see. Dude, I would have to enter the studio as a guest and they could add me at any time. I don't know if I want to commit to this. No, this is really weird. Do I want to commit to this? Do I hop on in it? Okay. Let me see if I want to commit to this. Do I want to commit to this? Okay, I guess I will.
Explain again.
Yeah.
In the
What
sound narrations, Bukhari Muslims, not in the Quran. A lot of stuff is not in the
Okay, let
Quran.
me see.
Muhammad taught there will be Muslims who go to hell. Now, he doesn't call it purgatory. He calls it Jahannam, but you understand,
Yeah.
Muhammad also taught that if someone dies,
I'm
sincerely
committed.
believing
I'm
and
here.
confessing there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, you die,
Why is Shamoon here?
you will be
Because I'm in the
guaranteed
bathroom.
Jannah, paradise. Now,
Yeah.
They're gonna add me.
he also said there are many Muslims who said that confession will end up in hell. Why?
Even
Because what he's saying is, if you die believing there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, you will end up in hell.
Okay, I got too nervous, boys. I couldn't just stay in the background like that and not be added. Woo, woo, bros. I was too nervous right there. Okay. We'll go back to the Yabara debate. Go back in there. I can, bro. I can. I left. That would be so awkward if I went back in. No, I can't go back in there. I'm too scared to go. I am a coward, coward, be a man. Shut up. I'm not going back in there. I'm not going back. Not going back, okay? I'm not going back. Cry about it. You guys, you can all cry about it. I'm not going back. Nope. You guys can ask all you want. We're going for a banger. Yeah, cry about it.
Welcome to the Reason and Theology Show. I'm your host, Michael Lofton, joined by Eric Ibarra, a Roman Catholic. And today we're going to be discussing mainly the papacy, especially Canon 6 of Nicaea and the Roman primacy, which is going to be a response to J. Dyer. Eric, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well, Michael. Good to be here.
Yes, sir. And just kind of as a heads up for everybody, towards the end of this show, we're going to have some live calls. I'll start to give the number a little bit later on. But all right. Well, Eric, we have Jay on. Jay, how are you? Welcome back to the show.
Good. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me give you a chance to maybe interact with Eric, but I want to make sure that it's structured, that y'all get even time. Would it be okay that maybe I don't know if y'all want to do maybe just a back and forth free for all, or do y'all want to maybe do something that's timed?
No, I don't. This is not a
okay.
Moderated.
Okay, so we can do maybe
a super chat to go back. Okay, I mean, if somebody sends $100 super chat, I kind of would be forced to go back, right? I mean, I kind of would be forced.
Moderated debate another time. Why don't y'all just do a free for all, back and forth chat in that case?
Well, one thing I would say is that initially listening to what Eric's saying about the Canon 6 of Nicaea first, and then I want to talk about the pre-Vatican II papal encyclicals, which I've read extensively. I have a lot of familiarity with that. But first thing I would say is that if you look at Canon 6 of Nicaea, it's correct. It is talking about the Pope's regional jurisdiction. Now, what Eric seemed to do was to assume that we all know that it was just assumed that his universal jurisdiction was already understood. But in fact, if you read the canon, the only statement that gives universality there is the council saying that the universal limitations are to be in effect. So it's very odd that this canon would speak this way. And we're just supposed to assume that it was understood that it was universal in terms of his, not just local, but also his primacy over the entire church throughout the world, right? And again, I'm stressing that it likens the jurisdiction local.
Okay, this is yap too. This is absolute yap. I think we might be coming to the end, boys. I think we might be coming to the end. I think it might be over. What are the... Okay. Thank you, Kayak. I guess I'm doing Q&A now. What are the conditions for when you can and cannot pray the imprecatory psalms against your ex-girlfriend? Okay. I feel like there's a article in the Summa where St. Thomas talks about the imprecatory psalms. Where is it? I can't remember where it is. Okay. Oh, wait. I was the guy who wrote the article about this. Okay. That's why I remember it. Let me see. This was St. Augustine in De Doctrina Christiana. Let me just, and St. Thomas in his Summa does as well. It's Secunda Secundae, question 25, article 6, response to the third objection. Oh, okay. So I did quote both of them in this. Okay. Man, I was reading back then, I guess. When was this? When did I post this? June 17th, 2021. Okay, that was a while ago. So let me see what the conditions are for you you praying imprecatory psalms against your ex-girlfriend. Okay, Article 6. Secunde, question 25, Article 6, response to the third objection. Okay. Such imprecations, which we come across in Holy Writ, may be understood in three ways. Okay, let me share my screen so you guys can all know about this. You guys can all know about when you can say imprecatory psalms against your girlfriend, ex-girlfriend. First, by way of prediction, not by way of wish, so that the sense is, may the wicked be, that is, the wicked shall be turned into hell. Second, by way of wish, yet so that the desire of the wisher is not referred to the man's punishment, but to the justice of the punisher. According to Psalm 57:11, the just shall rejoice when he shall see the revenge. Since according to Wisdom 1:13, not even God hath pleasure in the destruction of the wicked when he punishes them, but he rejoices in his justice. According to Psalm 10:8, the Lord is just and hath loved justice. Third, so that this desire is referred to the removal of the sin, and not to the punishment itself, to the effect, namely, that the sin be destroyed, but that the man may live. Okay. The removal of the guilt. Wow. Removal of the sin. Wow, I can't believe they translated it like this. If culpa here, it should probably be guilt. And then they have sin here, which is peccata. Two completely different words translating the same way, and they give two completely different senses. Yeah, it's about standard for a Summa translation. But there you go. That's what you can do for praying imprecatory psalms against your ex-girlfriend, okay? I used to follow Canadian Catholic, and I had no idea why he disappeared until now. I had no idea that he'd... Yeah, yep. Are you guys pitching in money to try to... Are you guys trying to agree upon getting $100 sent to me so I will rejoin? Oh my goodness. When is the Father Rippiger collab going to happen? I don't know. He seems to be doing a lot more, I've noticed. He had like a spur of like a bunch of different collabs in like a month or two. Okay. Why don't you do more stuff with Sam Shamoon? I would. I absolutely would do more stuff with Sam Shamoon. I guess we just haven't talked about it. I'm sure he'd be open to it. Does it even make sense to talk about a girlfriend cheating? What are you talking about, bro? $10 and 5 yen so far. Okay. Do I want to leave or do I want to stay? I don't know. You guys are kind of planning. You guys are planning. So I don't know whether I want to leave or not. You never reacted to Kyle. Yes, I did. I did twice. Yeah, do I yap or do I stay? Yeah, that's the real question. Do I yap or do I stay? I don't know. I will go and I'll scope out the Sam Shamoon stream. I'm not you know. Oh no, it's not on Sam Shamoon's channel. It's on Patristic Pillars. Okay, maybe I will join. I will join. Just send me whatever you guys collected. I don't care anymore. I'll just join. Yeah, we got to do a little waiting in the background though.
With a
Yeah, there it is, guys. I shared it in the comment section. Once you go watch it, I was kind of shocked because I didn't know this. Because I'm learning, so I got to go through the catechism because I'm trying to finish Deuterochronicles. I'm almost done with Sirach. I'm going to go into wisdom by the grace of God. But anyway, brother, I don't want to hold you up. I just came up to mention Islam does have a form of purgatory. Now, what does that tell you?
Before you go, brother, we've got a heretic that wants to say hi.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, how's it going, Sam?
Hey,
How's
buddy.
it going, William?
You want to do?
Going
You want to
great,
do a
brother.
debate review so you can show you're better than everyone?
Wait, what debate review?
No,
I don't
because
know.
I see you do a lot of debate reviews.
Oh, he does, really? Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I do some of them. I mean, it's kind of a way for me because I like people are interested in that stuff, and I can
Yeah.
give commentary on that, and I find it to be a fun little way to get across information that I think is important.
No doubt. No doubt.
So I want to ask you about your recent discussion on monarchical Trinitarianism, because I know that Cameron, I mean, he's public now. He said it the other day that he is Catholic. And I was told, I can't pronounce his name, Sijawadi, is it?
Yeah, Dr. Joshua Sijawadi.
He's Catholic too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you first did a debate or discussion on his discussion, it came off like you were saying that this view is heretical. I didn't get to watch all of it.
Well,
so what's the problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of went over this with Dr. Sijawade, but the issue isn't with like the idea of monarchical Trinitarianism in general. Like even when I asked Dr. Branson this directly, because we all agree that the Father is the fount of the entire deity, because the Son even receives the spirit of power from the Father. So we all agree that the Father is the monarch in this way, and therefore is specially predicated the title of God. The issue is with Dr. Sijawade's model in particular, because he thinks that the divine nature is somehow a fourth thing, which is the view which was condemned at the Fourth Lateran Council from Gilbert of Poitiers.
And didn't he? I have not watched the video, but didn't he say something negative about Lateran? Or am I incorrect about
he
that?
did, and that's my good friend Hassan. He actually collected a lot of great documents from the church going over the role of theologians and the obligation of theologians to teach in accordance with both ordinary and extraordinary magisterium, and how this applies even to people in roles like ours, as we can't just, we're just YouTubers, so we can kind of dispense with it and teach however we want. That's not how it works. It's a very grave obligation that we have to hold the ecumenical councils and the teachings of Rome in honor.
So he can't be a Catholic in good standing with the church if he rejects it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's a point that I made throughout the discussion. We want to have a part two. And the difficulty is during the discussion we had, and I talked to Dr. Branson about this over email. I had no idea it was going to be a debate. I was presented to me as a discussion. We all went in, and then it was kind of sprung on three of us. I mean, Dr. Sijawade, I think, kind of knew already. I don't think it was intentional or anything like that. It was just kind of sprung on us. Yeah. If I knew it was supposed to be a debate, I mean, I would have prepared much differently than it just being a discussion. But we're supposed to have a part two, and in part two, we're going to be Astro and I are going to be directly critiquing his view of the nature as a fourth thing. And I do think it'll be fair to bring up pretty heavily, like, you are a Catholic. This is the teaching, the dogmatic teaching of the Fourth Lateran Council. This is infallible. And we ought to read the councils in harmony with one another and not say, well, we can pick the first 7 ecumenical councils, which I don't even think he can justify. This is the teaching of the first 7 ecumenical councils, particularly. But we ought to read these in harmony and not read these as different.
I do apologize bringing it up. It's not relevant to the stream, but I did.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, brother.
So then someone needs to tell Cameron, because he just said it in a video, because he was responding to a Mormon, and the Mormon said he's a Catholic, so that Cameron did not deny that, since he's admitted that Cameron, if he's a Catholic, he has to then be in agreement with ecumenical councils, and he cannot just simply go with a philosopher just because he likes the way he debates and his arguments. So someone needs to help these brothers come along, because Cameron's new. He's a babe, but Dr. Sijawadi should know better, right?
I mean, I'm hoping that at least, I could be a good influence in this way. I don't want to be, too abrasive about it, especially with Cameron, because I do think there is this sort of analytic philosophy sphere where the way in which they've been taught to do theology is we can kind of just like run wild and posit whatever we want, but that's not the way that Catholic theology runs. Catholic
Sure.
theology is, because we're preaching the deposit of faith to the people of God, we don't just kind of present our own theories. We faithfully pass on what we've received, and we're allowed to, amongst each other, maybe, kind of come up with some new solutions to old problems. We always have to be docile to everything the magisterium's already taught. And the place to preach this isn't the public sphere, and it isn't even students, for that matter.
Yeah, I had and this was a while back. Sam might remember, maybe he doesn't, but I expressed concern over Sijuati's theology for quite a while. I never ever voiced my opinion out loud because, quite honestly, I didn't think that Sijuati would gain quite a platform like coming on Capturing Christianity or anywhere else, and spread the stuff he's been saying for a while. And I want to be clear to the audience. You've got guys like Dr. Namesh and guys like Dr. Dale Tuggy. They love using clips from Sijuati to attack the Trinity. That tells you everything. And they've been doing it for a long time. Sam, you might remember, maybe you don't, many months ago, I told you I had issues with that guy. I've heard stuff he said that I don't care how steeped you are in theology. When you spout the kind of stuff he's been spouting, it's very problematic.
All right.
Very problematic.
See, because like I said, I'm learning, relearning, unlearning. So I'm careful. Once I'm told something this is definitely dogmatic, then I can't go against it if I'm going to be good standing with the church. So I don't know. So then it means someone has to tell him. You're the guy to tell him. You're the philosopher, dude. So
I don't know about that. It's also kind of weird because there is a dynamic to where, like, I studied at the graduate level in theology. I mean, I'm not a PhD student yet, but perhaps one day. But there is this dynamic which is always looming over. It's not as much with Dr. Branson. I mean, Dr. Branson, my interactions with him, he seems great. But and Dr. Sijuati at least seemed quite nice, but at least extrinsically with those around us, there is a dynamic where like I'm a young guy. I'm probably younger than everybody else I interact with on the online apologetic sphere. But he is seen as, an older scholar in the field and having expertise. And really, it doesn't seem like when I say things, it carries much weight. So I do want to be very careful about how I present my critiques of somebody like that, especially because he's a fellow Catholic. But I mean, I think that might be the very reason why it's so important, and why I was so glad to have that discussion. Although, God willing, when there's a part 2, we will be able to get in a little bit more precisely, because he seemed to kind of dodge every time I would bring up Lateran 4 and say, look, Gilbert of Poitiers was declared a heretic. I mean, this isn't, he was generally rejected by the schools or anything like that, which that itself would be problematic. But he was infallibly declared to be a heretic at the Fourth Lateran Council. And he made a statement which I found to be extremely problematic, where he said, well, Lateran 4, and he said this in his video with Bertuzzi, Lateran 4 is not an ecumenical council because it was only a Latin council. And that is against both Western and Eastern canon law. You cannot say that. That's extremely dangerous.
That's terrible.
Did he recant?
No, I doubt it.
No.
Well, brother, you owe it to the faith, the Catholic Church, in a loving grace, because you can do it. I'm the bad cop. I'm the bad guy. To tell him you're wrong. It is ecumenical. You need to recant because people look up to you and they're going to be misinformed, and you're going to answer to the Lord. So you can do that because this is your field. Someone like me, I mean, if I heard that, I'd be baffled, confused, because I'm learning.
Yeah.
So you got to do it, brother. You have to. So I praise God that you're stepping up. And Astro, former Shia, I didn't even know that. I found out in the discussion he's a former.
I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah, Astro and Hassan are both former Shia.
I had no clue.
Which I have. I mean, talking with most of my friends are actually former Shia in the online sphere, and they're just a different breed than the Sunni. I mean, they're just an absolutely different breed. They come from like interesting sort of scholastic backgrounds, and they're very into like natural theology and such. So they're very disposed to be very good Catholics.
Good. That's awesome.
To them.
diehard Catholics who came out of Shia Islam, and you would know
Here
more
we go,
than me.
baby.
The Shia are the intellectual heirs of the Mutazilites, aren't they?
I don't know much about
yeah, right.
the history stuff.
They say it. Mutazilites were the ones that were called the Kalimun, the ones who used logic, Aristotelian logic, against what they call the proto-Orthodox Muslims. They said that Allah cannot have a true distinction of attributes because then that would nullify his unity.
Oh, wow.
He has attributes. Are those attributes contingent? That's the same lines in which Dr. Adani argues, because Ismailism is a sect of Shia Islam, and Shia Islam has been influenced by Mutazilite Neoplatonic thinking.
Really? Yeah, I've been wanting to have a discussion with Dr. Andani because it's very fascinating when we do get a little bit of a back and forth, which we've had a little bit of a back and forth before, and especially with Astro when we talk to Dr. Andani, is they have a very deficient view of God and his simplicity, of the way in which divine intellection and will work. And it's like almost like you're just talking to a completely different universe, when you're getting into discussions with him, because like at first you would think, okay, he's a Neoplatonist, I'm a Thomist, like we're gonna 98% we're gonna kind of agree, but he's completely defining simplicity differently. He's completely defining intellection differently. There's just these fundamental denials of natural theology that Catholics, generally speaking, are going to agree upon.
Right.
You're the guy to do it. Have a discussion with him, because someone told me that in the discussion he had with he said that divine simplicity is actually from the Shia tradition or Mutazilite tradition inherited by the Catholics.
No, that's completely false. I mean,
ridiculous.
It is ridiculous because this is a point that I made against Dr. Sijuwade and Dr. Branson, is that we as Catholics in the scholastic tradition especially are inheritors of the Aristotelian church fathers who were reading the commentators on Aristotle and Plato. Yep. I mean, you read, for example, St. John of Damascus in his philosophical chapters, he's quoting Ammonius, who's a commentator on Aristotle.
Sure.
So we're really doing the same exact thing that the church fathers are doing. In the scholastic tradition. It's not some sort of departure or rationalization of Christianity.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So that's why this would be beneficial for someone like me to do a series on this.
Yeah.
Because that was the claim that he made, that actually divine simplicity is something that the Mutazilites passed on, and then the Christians picked up on it. So he's crediting the Muslim tradition for bringing divine simplicity to the West.
Ridiculous.
Gotta blow it away, brother. You're the man.
That's absurd. Yeah, that's crazy. I can't believe he said that.
Yeah, someone told me that in the debate he was.
Well,
saying,
you're debating him. You're debating him pretty soon, aren't you?
Me,
Sam?
Not Dr. Khalil Andani. He's going to be having a part 2 with. I have a hard time pronouncing his name. Dr. Sijuwade and Paul Branson. They're going to have a part 2.
Yeah,
where they're going to call the offensive.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be great because it feels like as a Thomist, we're always on the defensive. Generally speaking, it's going to be people who are like, hey, we don't understand what you're talking about. It feels like you're talking gibberish. Like, we're going to kind of throw stuff at you. We're going to respond. And it's basically, we respond in the first place. And then we spend 2 hours like trying to clarify again and again what we said until it got to a point, funnily enough, where Dr. Branson, kind of smirked when I responded in a certain way, because I could tell that, he was catching what I was saying in response. And he conceded, and he's like, well, they're kind of making good points here. And I could see how it wouldn't be contradictory if you assumed like X. And like Dr. Sijuwade was not having any of it throughout the whole time.
I got to check that out. I got to watch that.
Oh, it was, I felt like we could have done a lot better. And there's a few things that I would rather have brought up. But I do think that it was helpful in many ways.
How long was it?
It
was like almost 3 hours.
Oh my goodness! I'm gonna have to put it in 1.5.
Not for the faint of heart. And someone
it's very long.
Want to know deep scholastic philosophical foundations for the Trinity.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hear it at the gym. Put it at 1.5.
Gordo, I got to listen to that because you
will.
guys reminded me of how stupid I really am. So I appreciate it.
I don't. I mean, I say. I mean, it's not that I'm not at all in any way individually like brilliant. It's literally the fact that it's kind of like learning another language, and I'm just like an interpreter. You can be a very stupid person and speak a second language. Like that happens all the time. And I'm just speaking a second language here, trying to interpret it, and it's very unclear a lot of times. I'm literally just parroting. I've never had an original thought. I'm just parroting everything everybody else is saying.
There's nothing wrong with that, though. You're parroting good stuff. There's nothing wrong with that.
So, but glory to God for you. We need that because I would not know that what he was espousing is contrary to Catholic teaching. So I don't know that.
Yep.
So he's got to be reined in. I mean, he is a Catholic. He's got to be in good standing with the Catholic Church. He's not a Protestant.
The fact he's being given platforms is what is the most bothersome thing.
Yeah. Well, that's
the most bothersome.
You mentioned that Cameron confirmed that he was Catholic. Is that where was that?
Let me ask him now. I want to say because he told me he's Catholic. He told me that Dr. Suraj, but I wanted to ask someone else who may be more certain that he's Catholic. But yeah, so this is why I was baffled because when I found out you're critiquing his position, I go, but I thought he's Catholic as well. I didn't know. Let me see that. So let me want to see if he's online now. So let's see what he's going to say.
Cameron, you mean?
Oh, I thought you were talking about
no, not Dr. Sijawadi.
Yeah.
Definitely Catholic. I was talking about Cameron.
My apologies. Okay. A while back, he was talking about converting to the Catholic Church.
Uh-huh.
Then he decided not to go public, whether he did or not,
right?
Because people were bothering his family.
Correct.
It was becoming an issue. The reason why I say that I can assert he's a Catholic, because right now, if you go on his channel right now, he did a response to a Mormon apologist. Because, oh my goodness, they're calling me at the wrong time. No, man. Okay, anyway. Let me get out of here. Let me get out of that. Okay, so he did a response to a Mormon apologist because Cameron's doing a series showing that Joseph Smith Muhammad are birds of the same feather. So there's a Mormon apologist who's responding, and in that response, he says, it's interesting that a Catholic apologist would say this.
Yeah.
And so Cameron never denied it. He never said he's not Catholic. It's right now the recent one. If you go watch on his channel, his recent response to the Mormon apologist. I forget what that Mormon guy's name is, but he debated James White's.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And his friend debated two of James White's pupils in Apologia Church, and they pretty much wrecked James White's crew.
They roasted him. They roasted him alive. Yeah.
I don't know his name, but it's on. If you go to Capturing Christianity, it's just the response he did. I believe it was even today. I watched it. I don't remember today or yesterday. So in that, the Mormon said, Cameron, a Catholic, he's a Catholic, and Cameron never denied it. He went with it and responded to the assertion. So when he didn't deny it, I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess the cat is out of the bag. But officially, I've never heard him say it. But in that debate, he said, Cameron is a Catholic, and as a Catholic apologist would use this kind of argument. Cameron didn't say a word of I'm not or I am. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's there. Go watch it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But if someone said, hey, Sam's Orthodox, like, well, why would Sam an Orthodox apologist? I said, well, first of all, I'm not an Orthodox apologist.
Yeah.
Or Calvinist. First of all, I'm not a Calvinist.
Right, right. You would clarify it. You would clarify it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Clarified it. So
yeah,
I'm going by that assumption. So anyway, it is what it is. But Lord willing, if you guys ever want to do any discussions on my channel, you know, I'm just an email away. You let me know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Give us about a month so we can do some really intense reading on the dictionary, English dictionary, so we can parse every word you guys say. Oh, what did he say? All right, let me go open up the dictionary, Webster's or something.
You got to set up a debate. Yeah, get Sijawadi there and set it up.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody, I mean, I'll Astro and I will 2v2 any group. We're a team now, I guess. I'm his translator, you know. Yeah,
Astro's pretty phenomenal and impressive in his depth of understanding of the issues. And when
I've never heard him before in my life. I got to hear him now.
Oh, he's phenomenal. If you listen to him, he really has done a lot of study on these issues, and
I will hear him.
Terminology.
I'll
So
hear
when
him.
someone told me he was an ex-Shia, I'd go like, wow,
Wow.
an ex-Shia who knows the issues, the Catholic tradition, he knows Thomism on a level that's amazing. And he sounds young.
Yeah, he's around my age. We're the same age.
Wow. And his knowledge is impressive. The breadth of knowledge and wisdom he has in these issues, it's amazing. He was really, really confident in the way he was addressing Dr. Sajwadi. He knew the issues very well. He didn't come off like he was being manhandled or out of his league.
Wow.
Yeah, we Astro and I and Hassan, we met probably like 3 or 4 years ago, and we kind of, I mean, Hassan converted a little bit before Astro and I did, but we started studying together, and we kind of got into late medieval and Baroque era Thomism. Had kind of introduced to it at about the same time, and really started reading it. And Astro, he made it his like life goal just to study the Trinity and the Incarnation as well. But he studied everything that he could get his hands on the Trinity. So he's absolutely brilliant on it.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Oh yeah, it's the same Mormon guy that Trent Horn debated. You're right, Palermo. Same guy, the Mormon guy that Trent Horn debated on Matt Fradd. Someone just said, yeah, it's him. He said he's a Catholic. He said, yeah, never corrected. So, brethren, if I'm wrong, forgive me. I went by what I heard. And when Cameron did not correct it, I go, I guess he's okay with people now associating him as a Catholic.
Right.
Yeah, it's I had a group of Mormons like try to contact me. And I actually invited them over. I was like, sure, you can come over. And because I wanted the experience of like trying to be evangelized by these Mormons. Have either of you gotten a discussion with Mormons before?
Oh yeah.
They are like it's like very manipulative. They didn't really know much about me, and I was kind of trying to keep it like low key. And they were being extremely manipulative. They were like saying they were phrasing their stuff, their words in ways that were technically true, but were misleading in their content. They kept heaping praises on the Catholic Church and stuff like that. It was extremely strange experience. They were just trying to pretend like they were the same as us. They were surprised when I started asking them about the Trinity because they just assumed that they didn't have to bring that up, and that was kind of something that they could just bring up later. It was very strange.
Obviously, you're familiar then with their belief that God the Father is a man. Then you know that.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't bring that up at the time, but it was, asking them question after question and them answering in extremely deceptive ways. It was a new experience for sure. Yeah,
some feel that, I won't belabor the point because I know William got to go. Some feel that what they're trying to do is revamp Mormonism. They want to now disassociate themselves with Joseph Smith and the others, and now they want to change and revamp Mormon theology so that it no longer resembles what Joseph Smith and others actually taught.
They're trying to revise it.
Yeah. So you never know if they continue. Maybe they'll revise themselves to the point that they'll just simply abandon this notion of God the Father being a man. Because then I asked one Mormon, then who's the original God that started this all? He goes, we don't know.
Well,
no, he actually told me.
I believe that. Yeah.
Great. And how about the Heavenly Mother as well?
Yes, Heavenly Mother and Lucifer is Yahweh's brother. Jesus is Yahweh, firstborn of Heavenly Mother and God the Father, and Lucifer is the younger brother. And we are on earth because, William, I'm sure you know this, because we existed as spirit children of Elohim.
I know that. Yeah, they believe that.
The plan of Yahweh over against Lucifer. So we were sent in body so he can become God. So you were there with me, which you don't remember.
I still remember, man. I don't remember.
See how you are? Even now you just want to deny any connection we had in the previous premortal existence.
I just don't remember, man. I don't remember. What do you want me to do? What do you want me
Old
to do?
Age, bro.
Yeah.
You're like an Origin-ist.
Yeah. There you go. My boy Origin, man.
But hold on. Origin didn't say God the Father is a man who was elevated to God.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Even Origin didn't go that far.
That's true. You're right.
He just thought it was
So,
a
yeah,
big
it's-
sphere. He thought it was a big sphere, the biggest sphere.
Yeah, and in fact, the point I was making, I asked the guy who was a Protestant, became Mormon. It was at one of their pageants. I go, so who's the original God? He goes, we don't know. That hasn't been revealed. They don't know who the original God who started all this, because God the Father, for those of you who don't know, they know. The two brothers here know, but God the Father did not create the heavens and the earth. God the Father is a man
Right.
who became God, but they did fashion already existing matter. They had a hand in fashioning it and formulating it and so on. But God the Father is not the original God. He was a man. He elevated to godhood. So who's the original God? They go, we don't
They don't know. They don't know. Wow. What an insane system. Insane system. Wow.
All right, well, hey, brother, anytime you want to come on my channel, just contact me, you and Astro, if you want to talk about topics, if you want to bring someone on to discuss, even with Sijuati, if you want to just come and have a particular topic he agrees, my platform's your platform.
Okay, that sounds great. After the glorious Filioque debate that we had.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
Yeah. People are still commenting on that. I don't go through the comments because, like I said, for me to keep up with you guys, I'd have to go take seminary level philosophy courses for 10 years, and then still
He took out David Erhan. There's just no doubt about it. He clobbered him.
I don't like saying that after debates.
No.
Yeah. I know you don't, but I'll
say that. But
I'll say it.
Bad taste.
And people can clip it and they can show David if you want. I don't care.
That's above my figures. So I have to go.
Take him out.
Here's what I am going to ask. This is because I don't want to. I know you got to go, but this one I need clarification. I got baffled.
Yeah.
I had thought, because I don't know much about the issues, that the Orthodox say the Spirit proceeds from the Father alone, whereas in the Western tradition it's Father and Son. But then I had heard a clip from Dyer and then David Erhan in your debate. They do acknowledge the Spirit proceeds from the Father and Son in some sense, and I still didn't understand the distinction. What was that distinction?
Eternal manifestation or energetic procession.
Yeah.
They think there's three modes. Okay, so what I like to tell people, anybody out here, there's a very easy way to get this. There was a man named Gregory of Cyprus in the 13th century who was responding to a man named Patriarch John Bekos, and he made up this response because John Bekos started reading St. Cyril of Alexandria very heavily and showed that the procession of the Spirit was eternal from the Son. Whereas for Photius the Great, and every response before the time of Gregory of Cyprus, they were always justifying any text that talked about proceeding from the Son as a temporal sending. So it was a completely novel, made-up theory in order to try to get around all of the texts that John Bekos brought against Photius's theory. My friend Unius Initiative, if anybody's interested, my friend Unius Initiative translated John Bekos's work against Photius's mystagogy, and it's a line-by-line refutation of it. It's very good.
Where is it?
If you just Google Unius Initiative, John Bekos, it's the first thing that should pop up.
And so he demonstrates that prior to Photius, you will find.
Well, I mean, that's me reading the history. John Bekos did respond to Blackernay, did respond to Blackernay, and did respond to his opponents, and said that nobody's ever heard of this before. Like, we have no idea what you're talking. That's literally what he said. He responded. He's like, nobody's ever heard about this. No student of theology in the entire world has heard about this distinction you're making. Like, where are you getting this from? Yeah. And he basically cherry picked some texts where the language of manifestation was used. But as St. Gregory of Nazianzen, in one of his theological orations, I can't remember off the top of my head, he says manifestation, that is the relation one to another. So, I mean, the manifestation is just the relation. It's not some sort of special mode of procession besides the hypostatic procession, like such a thing could even exist.
Wow. All right. I got to read what the early Christians wrote about the Spirit proceeding from the Father. And that's the issue that I said I'm going to study. I need to learn it. But you are saying that he was able to show citations prior to Photius. They're affirming the Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very easy with the Latin fathers because, and this is kind of a trap that you can get a lot of these Orthodox apologists in. You ask them, what did St. Augustine, St. Fulgentius, and St. Isidore teach about the filioque? And they'll say they were wrong because Photius said they were wrong. And then you ask them, what did St. Maximus say about the Latin Fathers? And they'll say, well, St. Maximus said that the Latin Fathers only taught the manifestation of the Spirit. And you say, well, do you think that St. Maximus was stupid? Do you think that St. Maximus didn't know how to read the Latin Fathers? Because you just conceded that the Latin Fathers taught the filioque.
Right.
So either St. Maximus is agreeing with the Latin Fathers and teaching the filioque, or St. Maximus is misreading Latin Fathers and he's dumb, which obviously they don't want to say that. So it's a pretty easy, quick patristic argument that you can have. But yeah, St. Isidore, his etymologies, there's certain sections where he writes about the Trinity. That's really good. Obviously, St. Augustine's De Trinitate. And then there's untranslated portions from St. Fulgentius, which are helpful. But his On Faith to Peter is really good.
I got to dip into it. So thank God for it. Okay, I know, William, you got to go, man. So I don't want to.
I gotta go get my daughter.
Bless you guys.
Yeah.
And like I said, email me, brother, if you ever want to come on.
Do it again.
Christian.
We'll do it again. We got to do a whole stream.
Absolutely.
In fact, I'm probably going to do a whole stream soon just on the Eastern Fathers in purgatory. I mean, I love using St. Maximus. I'm going to get them to you. I love using St. Maximus against them in purgatory. I love it, especially because St. Maximus uses the fiery language that they hate. They hate to utilize. So
send me all those quotes and the
I'll get them
Jewish
to you, brother.
references so I can make them available on the blog so people can go access them in their debate.
I'll get them. Hey, brothers.
God
Great
bless
talking
you
to you
guys.
all.
Yep.
Y'all
God
have a
bless.
great evening. God bless you all. Y'all take care. Everybody, God bless you all.
Okay. That went well, boys, didn't it? Aren't we glad you peer pressured? Yeah. I don't even need the $100 you guys promised me. I don't even need that anymore. You're like, I'll send you $100. I knew you guys were going to do that. Like, I'll super chat $100 for you to see this. I knew you weren't going to do that. I knew it. I knew you guys weren't going to do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was W. You guys were right. That was the side quest that we needed. That was absolutely the side quest we needed. Didn't Photius just condemn Augustine? Exactly. It's kind of funny. You just start you see that like their apologetic just makes absolutely no sense. Like when you push together these multiple fathers, like it makes no sense whatsoever. Our Lord's providence brought this stream collab together. So true. Oh man, Wagner was rewarded for being brave. Yeah, I guess I was. I was a big scaredy cat, wasn't I? Oh man. You were banned from the Discord for no reason, probably because one of my mods banned you. Do you have a method of contacting you directly about this matter? I don't know. I guess you could email me. The boys need to see that this is how it is talking to girls. If you reach out and have a conversation with one, opportunities might arise. Yeah. Okay, real. That's not. Oh, Aquino, how you doing, Mr. Aquino? Hey, what about limbo? Affirming it seems a better theological position than not affirming it. Okay, well, I did a whole video on it. Just look up Scholastic Answers Limbo. That'll explain everything. The church teaches limbo, kinda. That's the video. I think I cooked there because I agree with the ITC document, and I also agree with what St. Thomas says on limbo. Bought your course to put my free time. So true. You guys should go on my website, buy my course, go on the Patreon, or you could go on the Patreon and get the level where you get the course videos and everything else. That's what you guys should do. More streams with Sam will be based. Oh yeah. Sam and I need to do like a big old filioque stream or something like that. Ever heard of critical? I think you mean monkey Thomist. Is the monkey Thomist? Yeah, guy doesn't like me. Guy doesn't like me because he got some beef with Astro, and then he said some dumb stuff. And he talked about how the Scotists are going to burn in hell. He said the Scotists are going to burn in hell. That's literally what the guy said. And I said, you're literally a crazy man. Everybody unfollow this guy. And he got butthurt about it. Yeah. Wait, does I didn't know Sam was chill like that. Give me money, says Wagner. That's true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, critical Thomist. Remember the bio? He said critical. It's like the bio said I'm a Thomist. And then he's like, I'm called then everybody was like, no, you're not. And he's like, well, I'm critical Thomist because I'm critical of Thomism. Oh man. I tried to send a super chat, but it said I couldn't because the message was bad or something. Well, could you just like do the little asterisks and stuff like that? You know, you could do that. I know. I was thinking about trying to red pill Sam on predestination there. Maybe soon. Would we say St. Augustine was correct on his view of Old Testament theophanies as holograms, or is the hologram interpretation 20th century nonsense? You can read De Trinitate. I think it's book 2 or 3, where it talks about the theophanies of the Old Testament. I mean, it was just angels. It wasn't like hologram. It could have been holograms. I mean, technically speaking, it could have been holograms because the point is that there's something out there like material that we're seeing. You know. Okay. I'm cursing the Phodians right now. All right, pray an imprecatory psalm for me. Okay. Maybe if Wagner gets caught for tax evasion, he can plead insanity and get sent to the loony bin. That is true. That is true. Wait, Richard Spencer is voting for Kamala Harris? That is so cursed. That's crazy. Yo, the $100 came. Yo, wow. Christian bravery Wagner. Christian bravery Wagner. I didn't think it was actually gonna come. Oh man. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Did you know that unbaptized dead infants received the sense of pain? Don't you mean the pain of sense, dude? Yeah, more Sam equals more money. Yo, Sam. Yeah, with Sam around, we're rolling in dough. We're absolutely rolling in dough. Thank you. I appreciate it. ND Irish. I appreciate it. They do, should I do okay, I was thinking about this. There's still 214 of you remaining. Make sure you like the video. But I was thinking about this. By the way, remember Litany of the Sacred Heart. Remember to read Pope Francis' encyclical in the Sacred Heart, okay? Remember that. Remember tomorrow, pray for all those souls out of purgatory. But I was thinking, should I I'm not going to do like an election night stream, like covered stream. Obviously, Nick is going to be streaming, and most of you guys are probably going to be watching Nick or something else. But should I do like before the results come out? I wanna just try my hand at doing one of the electoral college maps, and like I can make it interactive. Like if I don't know about a state, I could like poll you guys, so you guys can help me fill out a map for all the battleground states. Okay, but obviously there's going to be I don't want to lose. So I'm obviously going to fill out a lot of it myself. Yo, massive Wagner W's tonight. Thank you for the super chat. You guys are too nice. You guys are too nice to me. You guys are way too nice to me. I don't watch Nick's stream. Do you guys really want an election night stream? What would you even do? Election night in theology, where we just talk about we do an election night stream, but I just talk about theology the whole time. I just bring on Hassan to yap for like 4 hours while we're watching the election results. Okay. Hey, Christian, question. How much does YouTube take from a super chat? Do they take a cut or no? I think they take like a quarter of it. Somewhere around there, 20 to 25%. I think that's the number. I'd have to check it out though. Talk about the Amish and why their theology is wrong. Yeah, so the Amish are Credo Baptists. They have a false view of the relationship between church and state, the spiritual and the temporal power. They don't believe in the priesthood. I mean, the Amish have a lot of different issues in their theology. The Amish have huge issues in their theology. The Amish have big issues. A stream of Kamala's theology, memes, and trolling. I don't know. If there was enough interest, I would consider it. I would consider doing like an actual election night stream where I just like meme the whole time and watch and like react to different stuff, like while we wait for the election results. You know, have a little bit of like a Catholic theology spin on it. I just don't know how many people would actually be interested. You know, that would be the issue. I wouldn't want to like stream the whole night with like 100 concurrent. Like that would kind of just be like a big downer. So I don't know. Maybe I'll like put out a poll or something the night before. Like, should I just do like an election map filling, or should I actually do like an election night stream? Do you think so? I mean, yeah, I've heard that before, but I don't know how. Yeah, I just say that I heard that. Like I saw that a few of them were like, yeah, you're not going to get the results on election night, which sounds like a nightmare. Actually, sounds like an absolute nightmare. You know, if it's as big as it seems like it's going to be, which I'm very optimistic. If it's as big as it seems like it's going to be, then I don't know how they wouldn't know on election night. I mean, you could call an election pretty early. A meme election stream would draw in the crowd. Yeah, maybe I should invite Nick. Be like, hey, Nick. It's like, no, that's like the biggest night of the whole year for him. That's like the biggest night for the whole year. Hey, Nick, I know it's the biggest night for the whole year, but could you come on my stream? Can you just hang out with me, please? Please. Please, please. Oh, man. Is it a condemned position to believe that at the second coming of Christ, you will take the souls out of limbo into heaven like you did for the Old Testament saints? Yes. Yes, it is a condemned position. Because for the Old Testament saints, they had sanctifying grace. Infants in limbo don't have sanctifying grace. The only things that the infants in limbo were missing, the only thing that the Old Testament saints were missing was satisfaction. I actually talk about that in the paper that I put on Patreon. And I also talk about that in the video that I did for members. So that's a reminder that you should do that and stuff. The fact that there hasn't been any violence indicates that I'm just memeing. What does he mean by this? Do a stream on why women shouldn't be presidents. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't know. I'm just like not a politics guy, so I don't know whether I want to, step on anybody's toes there. Theology electoral map debunk Amish in 12-hour deluxe stream, please. I don't know. It seems like a lot of people want it though. Seems like a lot of people vote Harris for nuking of Moscow. Dude, the BizLarpers get destroyed. I haven't voted yet, so bro makes a convincing point. The BizLarpers will be eliminated by Harris. So this is true. Do you not remember the last 8 years in Summer of Love and riots that would happen every election year? Actually, funnily enough, who was it? Was it George Floyd who died? One of the individuals who died. They died like the day of my wedding. And like my wife and I, we went on like a little bit of a trip, and we were like, okay, well, we just got married. Like, we're not gonna like check the news or check the internet or anything. And we like got back on we got back, and it was like my birthday because I got married a few days before my birthday. It was my birthday, and I drove back to my parents' house to like pick up some birthday presents for myself. And I get to my parents' house, and my mom's like, yeah, there's like 100 cities where there's rioting and like half the country's on fire. And I'm like, what the frick? I haven't checked the news in like 4 days. Like, what's going on here? That was insane. Yeah, 2020 was in Floyd, but it was March. Okay, yeah, then that must not have been. It must have been somebody else then. Yeah, it might have been Breonna Taylor. I don't remember who it was. But yeah, it was like the entire country was freaking burning down. And it was happening when I didn't have any, like, I wasn't checking the internet. I wasn't watching the news. And then I just like figure out about it. I'm like, what the frick happened? Like, why is the country burning down? Anyways, I should probably go. It's pretty late for me, 10:30. So I thank you guys for a wonderful evening. This was a great stream. Best stream ever. I'm so white-pilled right now. Just hit 16,000 subs. I might do like a Q&A tomorrow or something. I don't know whether I'm going to stream tomorrow. If I do, it might be a Q&A. It might be a call-in. I don't know. But anyways, thank you all. As always, God bless.
If you really enjoy this channel, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/militant Thomist. At the first level, you get access to the private Discord. At the second level, you get access to weekly bonus videos. At the third level, you get access to free translations, articles, and notes on the Summa of St. Thomas. On the fourth level, you get access to course videos and DM questions. And beyond this, there are many other benefits, so please make sure to check out patreon.com/militant Thomist.